that easy to build your own SMITE Maxnomic chair, but before you can build it, you got to go and get one. Go to needforseat.com and use code SMITEMAX to get yourself a nice little discount and pick up one of your own SMITE Maxnomic chairs. I mean, you saw Gore and I were sitting them in there in the last previous cast. They're nice and comfy, perfect for casting SMITE, perfect for watching SMITE, or perfect for doing anything else that you may need to do. Once again, needforseat.com. Thank you, SMITE Maxnomic, for providing chairs out here into the studio, and for all of you out there at home, whether you're in the NA region or if you're over in EU, you can also pick yourself up one of those chairs. That's the words that I'm looking for. Set number 1 is done. Valhalla Valkyries, unfortunately, even after a nice performance in game number 1, they fall at the end of the day. The Solar Scarabs get a win, and now we get ready to get set up for game number 2. It's the Oni Warriors and the Camelot Kings. Goremizer joining me as we get ready to get set up for this one. Let's take a look at the schedule here in just a moment and kind of see anything that you may have missed so far. It's been an action-packed weekend. We had 2 games in studio yesterday. We had 2 great sets on Friday. I mean, the Bolts were able to kind of claw out of the depths against the Camelot Kings and find a win for themselves. And now we get to see the Kings battling out here again today with the Oni Warriors.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see this one. The Warriors have been looking a lot better, and they had kind of mentioned at the end of the last desk that having Neil specifically here in Georgia all of a sudden has picked up the pace for them. And the matchup hasn't necessarily been favorable for them versus the Kings, but we can get into that in a little bit.
Let's go ahead and look at the schedule and see what you may have missed. I kind of alluded to it already, but hey, let's just go ahead and get a nice little visual representation of everything that's happened so far this weekend. Tartarus Titans got a 2-0 over the Valks, the Bolts, 2 of the Camelot Kings, and three-game sets immediately following with the Leviathans, the Dragons, and then with today, the Solar Scarabs coming out with wins for themselves. So the Scarabs are finally able to find their first win, able to bring themselves up, at least confirming themselves in 7th seed for the standings. Let's take a look at those standings and see where everybody is. The Atlantis Leviathan still sitting at the top, 4-0. Everybody else below them just a little bit further, 3-1 for the Dragons and Titans. Olympus Bolts 3-2, and the Kings, if they can get a win here today, can bring themselves to 3-2. Or can the Oni Warriors play upset and find their second win of the day?
That's actually a huge deal, being able to, if you could potentially play upset and cause some trouble for them. And that is worth mentioning. In the past, this has been, again, favorable for Kings. They've won every single one of these matchups versus the Warriors so far, but only 2 of them have been 2-0s. The other 2 were 2-1s, so it does make things a little more complicated for them going into this, especially since we've seen a more empowered Oni Warriors as of late.
Yeah, the Oni Warriors have been looking really strong as of late. And that Hunter role, now that we've seen some changes to 3.9, is all the talk about the Assassin meta. But let's talk about some of the new Hunters that have popped in here. Uller, the most obvious one, but we've been seeing a lot more Hachiman as of late. We've been seeing the Ho Yi kind of sneak his way into some of these picks here and vote. Well, he's no stranger to this Ho Yi, this Hachiman. He's been playing it even since before this patch came out, back when the bow build was still the way to go. So don't expect to see too many change up here in Vote's builds.
Yeah, I'm actually excited to watch what Vote's going to bring out. That's something I was looking into this because we're talking about the Hunters. And admittedly, this hasn't been a great year for the Warriors, and so a lot of their stats tend to reflect that. But again, more recently, we've gotten to see a lot more of an impact from this duo lane as a whole. I mean, Neil, again, having him here and not necessarily playing on that ping from, I believe it was Western Canada, would have been, is a huge deal for them. But Vote has definitely stepped up in play and in style, and I'm excited, especially with, Uller being on the chopping block, what we've seen out of them the last couple of weeks. I think that this is a Warriors duo lane that is going to be able to take control and change a lot of, and at least force a lot of bans that maybe go that direction. Whether it's support or whether it's Hunter, that still remains to be seen. I wouldn't be surprised if, Uller's up there. But with Vote and a lot of the Hunters that are there, they go hand in hand, and I'm excited to watch them.
Yeah, I'm excited to see this matchup. I'm excited to talk to Vote, who's going to be standing by for our pregame interview to kind of talk a little bit to him and maybe get into his mind for this matchup. Vote, glad to have you here today. Kind of talking a little bit about the Hunters that have been changed up here. Uller, obviously, kind of at the top of the standings for a lot of the Hunter picks. There are some other kind of picks that have maybe kind of surprised you with this new patch that have been rising up.
Yeah, I feel like no one really likes, well, players at least, no one likes other metas because he's so unfun to play against, No one actually likes it. He's fun to play, but he's just super. I'm not gonna say the word on stream, but yeah,
Yeah, no, I get what you mean. Fun to play, not to play against, as far as Uller is concerned. Neilma now being down here in the States with you guys, how has that kind of changed up that dynamic in the duel lane? Now having him here with y'all.
Well, he's made my life a living hell because he's in the kitchen right now. So every time I walk out my room, he's just there. He just looks at me with his beady eyes, like an insect. He's just staring at me.
Have you ever gone in the kitchen and turned on the microwave just to mess with him, and if he ever kind of gets on your nerves?
Well, that turns off everyone's internet, so it's just not fun.
Not fun for everybody. But you could always just mess with him with it. Vo, you're going up against the Kings here. Haven't had the best history up against the team as a whole throughout the entirety of the year. Anything that you guys have been working on to maybe change that up and maybe find a win for yourselves today?
Well, I noticed that Genetics is kind of like a platinum level console rank, so if that might be the downfall.
Well, hopefully it can all work out for you today. Thanks for your time, Vo. I'll let you get back with the team to get ready for the game.
Thank you.
I just love how honest he was. You know, Neil's been making it rough for him, but ultimately I think having him there has probably been a net positive for the team, even if it has been a bit of a bother for him.
With his beady little eyes, like an insect. Those are like that's a
Direct quote
from Vote. He'll look at me with those beady little eyes like an insect. That is a descriptor for Neil Mall, apparently.
He's just watching. We got the Mom Musk and now the beady eyes like an insect just staring him down. But one thing that's going to be staring down both of these players is the Kings dual lane, specifically Netroid and Genetics on the other side of that. Netroid is kind of the player to really talk about here. We talked a lot about Genetics with, you know, how many times people ban his God pool out, how many picks down he'll go in the pool. Netroid hasn't had to have that same kind of level of falling back. He's been able to get kind of the same 2 to 3 picks for the majority of Phase 2 and even jumping into Phase 3. It doesn't look like that's slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah, and just made me think about it. I wonder how many of their games have had, like, okay, so you know what? Admittedly, he's played a lot more than I was going to give him credit for, which I will have to say was not a lot. I was going to say he's played maybe 2, but there has to at least be 3 because there's a Heimdall up high on that list. It just feels like you give this player in Netroid ROM, and the Kings have that jumps them to an 80% win chance. Like, just immediately from the picks and bans, they are more likely to win if Netroid is on ROM. He's got a wide variety of gods that he can play, but for some reason, this one just fits. I think it's the ults, the way he connects with them, the control that he gets in lane, and that makes things a lot more interesting, especially when we're talking about these picks and bans. In a lot more recent of these sets for the Kings, I've been saying that it feels almost like you have to ban this pick against him. If you add Ullr into that mix, and then I look at this matchup, 100% ban rate from the Warriors against the Kings with a Ymir, all of a sudden they're trying to control that duo lane pretty heavily. That covers 3 bans. Granted, some of those are much more wiggle. You could let the Ymir through, probably let the Rom through nowadays. But it just feels like there's a lot of pressure in that duo lane that the Warriors are going to have to overcome.
You know, interesting enough, we haven't seen Ymir in quite some time.
No,
it's been a little while. It's been a while since we've seen Ymir. And really it was kind of Genetics who was the one who was having that banned against him primarily. Wrong You and Awesome Jake also kind of in that same discussion. But with this duo lane, with Netroid being so comfortable on this ROM, even the Izanami has kind of been his second go-to. And then, as you talked just a little bit, the Heimdall is a third. And the fact that he only has to play those 3 hunters. What a shame that I've only got 3 hunters that I need to play to make my team successful. Netroid got to be feeling good to be able to get some of those picks here, and maybe the only Warriors are going to have to take a look at that. One thing you were talking about, maybe this ROM is ban-worthy. He looks more there are a few players that look more comfortable on a God than Netroid is with ROM, because he just gets to sit in the back line, throw out those abilities. Oh, somebody's low. Let's press my ultimate and see if we can get a couple of those nice snipes.
He's played 19 games on ROM this year, so grand scheme.
Okay.
Not in Phase 3. I don't know if they've even played 19 games in Phase 3.
Don't think so.
But he's won 15 of those 19 games. So he has done that. It's been banned against him 14 times as well. So, like, it's a lot of control. He's got a 71% kill participation with it. He's got a 4 KDA on it. Like, this is a good pick for Netroid. Then it drops down. I'm going to skip on her because he hasn't played that in a while. Then it drops down to like, Heimdall. And then, of course, we start talking about, like, the Izanami, which has been on the rise lately. And so that's where I think I'm going to have my eyes on maybe those 3 picks. Of course, Ullr's always in that conversation as of right now.
Let's see where the Oni Warriors put their picks and bans here in game number 1. They will have first pick, so maybe they can use that time to maybe ban this ROM away from Netroid. I've been talking a lot about it, but I mean, you just talked about it. He almost had, 20 games played and nearly a 75% plus win rate on that God. Not many players in this game have win rates on gods with that many games played. The only ones that really come to mind are like Shinto with Raijin and like Paul with Raijin or Tiamat. You know, those are the kind of names when you have more than 10 to 15 games on a god and a 75+% win rate, it might be time to just keep that god out of their hands. First bans coming through from the Oni Warriors will be the Khepri, who has been rising up amongst the supports. You know, it was funny, Mifflin kind of called it, he's a part of the new guard, between him, the Geb, and the Sylvanas, the new guard of bans. But it's so funny because he's one of the old guards of the support, but is the new guard in this meta because he kind of has been widely unseen up until these most recent weeks of SPL.
Yeah, Capri, honestly, Sylvanas has been in that conversation as well, and both of those have been very highly coveted against the Kings. They do not want to let them through. And so I'm wondering if they're going to let the Kings pick that up, because they've been more than willing to top 2 it if it is available for them. So either the Warriors may be scooping that away, or Sylvanas, since he's still available, something for the Kings to maybe think about, considering how much of an impact we've seen that healing have.
See, 2 mages banned away. The top 2 mages, according to Paul at least, the Tiamat and the Raijin, maybe according to just about everybody at this point. Those 2 gods have been dominating the mid lane, so no surprise to see them banned away here, which opens up a lot of possibilities. One of those being Sylvanas, because it was Gib, the Morrigan, and Odin banned away by the Kings. You did talk a little bit about them, but specifically Genetics has really liked this god. Between him and Inbound, those 2 players have really been fighting for this support to be up in that top slot.
I feel really good about that now.
That's a good one.
I can ride this for the rest of the day.
Oh, Ardio made it
yeah,
through.
Ardio made it through.
Oh.
That's a little unfortunate
That's
for
not
them.
fun.
But mainly because I forgot about Geb as well. I will admit that. I'll give myself the ups and the downs at the same time. But this is going to be an interesting dynamic for them. Ardio does look, we see her more in solo. She's more beneficial to have in solo lane and plays better from that role. That being said, the Warriors, Neil specifically, has been one of those players as a player as a support, and I think that the Genetics would be able to make that work if necessary. So it does still have a little bit of a flex pick. This has been a matchup that has been difficult for her now with the Cerberus locked in, and so that honestly to me makes me want to shift her maybe more into the duo lane just to get away from that. But I do think that we had mentioned it before, and based on what we've seen in the past, you're not too worried about it for the duo lane for the Kings because you still have all of your primary picks available.
Well, there's that god that Vote was talking about that's not fun to play against, but always fun to play as. Ullr, locked in for the Oni Warriors, and a Terra and a Chiron to boot with that Ardio for the Camelot Kings. A strong top 3 coming out of the Kings, but I'm not completely sold that this Chiron is going to be going to the duo lane. We have seen, I think so far only twice, once with Zeros and Neath mid, and then once with, I want to say it's Venenu with Ho Yi mid. Those are the only 2 players we've seen for this phase, drawing those hunters towards the mid lane. Still some flex potential with this Chiron. I'm not going to hold my breath on this one going immediately to duo lane. With Ardio and Terra locked in, does give a little bit of flex, but we have been seeing Terra go towards solo just a little bit more often as of recent. But with the Ardio kind of rounding this out one, and maybe if this was Neil on this other side here, maybe we still kind of are in the talking point of Ardio being support. But do you think the Ardio goes support up against this squad?
Probably not. I feel like Terra's just going to benefit over there. But again, I think that's, well, let me rephrase that. Ardio's just a better solo laner, period. That's a blanket statement. I think in that is better than Terra. But with both of them having that flex potential, neither one really has like a great matchup versus Cerberus, but I think Ardio has a better matchup versus Cerberus, at least in that regard. Plus, depending on whether, again, if it's Chiron mid, which that's a completely different discussion, but if it is going over to Netroid, it's a pick that has been nice to him, not the nicest, 50% win rate in all the games that he's played this year on it, so 4-4, and not too crazy. But alongside of Terra, first off, that's a lot of healing on this team.
Yeah.
Blanket for everybody. But also, you do then have maybe not like pressure against Ullr Sylvanas. That's not the way to look at this. But survivability against Ullr Sylvanas, you at least got that.
Yeah, it's hard to pressure against Sylvanas to begin with. You know, Sylvanas, Umoja, 2 Guardians that really do provide a lot of pressure in duo lane. They have a decent amount of wave clear. And then you couple it with an Ullr, who's just been rising in the ranks of popularity pretty much against all the hunters here. He's been one of the top go-tos. And a Discordia for the Camelot Kings. Not too many players out here still playing this mage. And a little surprising, we only saw 3 mage bans. It was the Raijin, the Tiamat, and then the Morrigan was banned by the Camelot Kings. Then it was 4, what I can only imagine are all going to be jungle bans with that Nike. You already see the 2 Guardians on each side, which means that this Nike would have been a jungle ban. So between the Nike Circuit and then a Hoonbot Daji, this leaves Discordia on the opposite side. And then, again, really only 2 mid laners in this game, in this league, really playing the Hera, now being hovered here by the Oni Warriors. Hey, liking these mage selections coming out of these 2 teams.
They feel very much these teams, right? Like, Discordia is something that the Kings will play, and admittedly, I think the Warriors would play. And I can't think of many others. Like, Venenu will throw it out every now and then. Like, I think it's someone everyone has in the wheelhouse. A good Strife in the right scenario changes everything, though. And I really do like what they have against this. Plus, it's weird to think about, but, like, she can be pretty decent at spreading a Divine Ruin around in the middle of a team fight, so I think having some anti-heal available, especially against the Sylvanas, is going to be helpful here. I like her. She does a good amount of damage. She disrupts the fights. She does what she needs to do. Hera, you got Argus. Thumbs up. There you go.
If I'm not mistaken, Discordia is the god that has the most player damage in a single game, and that was by Yaman.
81.
81 was it 81 or 87K? I can't
81.
81,000. So still, that's a lot of damage no matter what. Phil Swift would be very proud about having those ones there.
It was 81,321.
There you go.
In Season 5.
There's your fun fact of the day. If you didn't already get one, now you get who, what god, who, and how much damage that was exactly. Over 81,000 on this god. And that, by nature of her passive as well. Whoever has the highest damage in the game, you get a little bit of extra bonus damage. And if you're already the top, well, now it's even more damage for yourself. A Nemesis to round out the draft for the Oni Warriors. And now the Camelot Kings are looking at their final selection. The jungle is still the topic for them. And with this Hoon bots, with this dodgy band away, kind of lowers some of the options here for Captain Twig.
Yeah, I think it's a lot that can be available for him. And it's the same thing we've been watching. What has Twig played lately? He's been playing a lot of like Loki, Susanoo. He's been locking in. He hasn't felt confident on them when we ask him about those, but he has been playing them nonetheless. That's the thing that I think makes things a little more interesting for the Kings right now, is that you're in a jungle meta where your jungler isn't as comfortable as some of the others, which isn't anything necessarily against Twig. It's just the style he likes to play is, you know, exactly what we had before. Not only the Warriors, but like your Najas, your setups. And you've got the perfect team for this, right? Like, you don't need to be the carry when you've got Netruoid playing the way that they do. You've got Tings playing the way that they do. But I do think that it's something, especially with Discordia, that you would like to be able to scoop up. I'm just curious as to, what he was going to go. Susanoo has been, again, one that he's been trying with, and he's been doing pretty well with. And so I'm not too surprised to see him go towards this. Although I'm hoping to see, again, every single time we see it, it's done a little bit better. I want to know how he's going to perform with it today.
I mean, he had a good performance on the Susanoo, so I'm not surprised that he may have gone over towards this, considering everything else that's banned away from him. And the dodgy, I'm sure that he's glad that just got banned away, so nobody. I mean, he felt the wrath of Lasbra against that one game. That was not a fun time for him, but rounding out this composition, they've got a decent amount of CC with this Ardio. They've got the Terra here, both of them providing a good amount of healing for all of their team. Even on the opposite side, you have a Sylvanas who's going to provide tons of healing with the Wisp. We got to see just what it could do last game in the hands of Inbound. We'll see what it can do here for Neilma in this game. Just a little bit of a heads up to you guys. There is a little bit of a remake going for these players. We're going to get them in just as quickly as we can. We'll stick around here on the desk and talk about these drafts just a little bit longer. Nemesis, kind of I'm going to call Nemesis kind of the oddball out of this one. You know, you would think with Discordia, Hera locked in, those might be kind of the odd picks, but Nemesis is one we've seen kind of shy up a couple of times, but we haven't really seen any massive standouts of this god just yet.
Yeah, we've had a couple of moments. It feels like when you think Nemesis plus Cuvo Fred, that, again, locks pretty well for me. It makes sense there. But realistically, lately, she's been a little more slow going because she falls right in that in-between when I like to think of her. Nemesis can easily be a hyper carry, and with a lot of the builds that have shifted, I expect this to be something we've seen a lot in the past this year of the auto attack based Nemesis. This feels like it's a meta for ability-based Nemesis, right? All of those items getting buffed feels like it shifts dynamically over there. And she's one of the few assassins that gets to do both and be happy with both. And Cuvo's played her very well in the past, so I'm anticipating a lot from her. And plus that ult, really good for dealing with Ardio, which should be target maybe number 1, and then dealing with Terra, who should probably be target number 2. And so if you're able to get rid of at least one of them at the beginning with a really good Nim ult, then you're set for what should be a good fight.
Yeah, one of the few assassins in the game that is really truly a tank slayer just by nature of that ultimate, and then her passive get a couple of basics weaved in between that. And I think it's a good point to bring up is Nemesis can kind of go either way. If you want her to be a little bit more basic attack, you can go things like the stone cutting sword. You can even go in with the crusher, get a little bit of attack speed in your build. But then you can also just kind of default back to some of just the more damage ability base. I mean, things like Heartseeker getting a buff, Transcendence, Yoke's Wrath, ton of cooldown you can get in your build, and a ton of extra damage that you can throw out against some of those tanks, and especially against some of those squishies. She can really slaughter some of those squishier characters, and she can get her hands on them, especially if she can get that ultimate dropped in the middle of all of them. Looking at these two teams kind of without even really looking at the names across the top here, what are the composition are you kind of leaning a little bit towards here in game 1?
Man, that top 3 for the Warriors just feels really good. And then, like, ignoring the names, you know, Hera Nemesis is jumping down a little bit in terms of, like, the overall quality, I guess. But also then adding the names and saying, okay, well, it's Dardez's Hera and it's Cuvo's Nemesis. then it makes it balance out a lot more, right? It's a very, very solid just meta top 3, and then a very solid us top or bottom 2 for the Warriors. So I really like their draft in terms of cohesive nature and what it's going to be able to accomplish late game, just in the damage they do. That being said, Artio Terra.
I mean, Artio, 100% pick ban rate here, all the way up through Phase 3. Pretty much, I think, even since she came up in Phase 2, we've been seeing nothing but pick bans towards this god. And if you want one person to blame for that, you can probably blame Hardcore. He was the first one to bring it back in. So thanks, Hardcore, for bringing the Artio in the meta. And hopefully, well, maybe not hopefully, she'll be sticking around. But for the time being, she'll be here. And she hasn't had the most success, actually, so far in solo lane. Her first couple of debuts that she did get to slip through in Phase 3 end up being lost. I think that first win that she did get was in that Bolts game whenever Haddix was piloting it.
Yeah, and it's a pick that has been slowly but surely, like, even in those losses, very impactful. The healing is helpful. The cripple field is massive. And when you look at this, having a cripple field against 2-3 gods that have either a dash or a leap on this side of the Warriors helps control them down. The healing that she's going to bring is very helpful alongside something like the Terra. So all of a sudden, well, and the Chiron, let's go ahead and throw him in there just for some of those late game heals that will happen. Small, but still there. And so that's going to give them a slight edge. The problem is when I look at it, Hera is really good at disrupting a lot of the back line, especially with Argus chasing people down. It's good at helping separate the team a little bit. Stygian Torment from Cerberus, as well as his passive, really helps deal with that healing. Ullr's just kind of been deleting people lately,
yeah.
So that feels like it's going to be a problem getting healing over time as opposed to something that's just an instant burst. So in a lot of these team fights, Terra ult all of a sudden skyrockets as something that's important, but I think that the Warriors have a good draft to deal with the Kings. That healing is going to be the most oppressive, and if they can deal with that early on, and admittedly if they can control this Discordia and Susano enough, I don't think they have as much to worry about.
Well, Gormizer, I do have some good news for you. We're almost about to hop into that game. Players are just getting loaded up now, so we'll be sure to jump in just as quick as we can. But kind of talking about that Ullr deleting people, I remember watching that Dragon set with the Scarabs, and it was just hit that Axe Toss on the Sylvanas, and he was dead. Let's see if we can see a repeat of those Ullr performances here in game number 1. Oni Warriors and Kings. Let's take it to Dulcin and Aggro.
One final set to round out this weekend in the SPL, and it is the Oni Warriors versus the Camelot Kings. Dulcin, Aggro, and Doug. We'll be bringing you all the fun sites to finalize this weekend in the SPL. And Aggro, I think that this one, largely dependent on the Oni Warriors that we get here today. We've seen some great and some not so great from this team this phase.
Yeah, I think that it's just a matter of how consistent are they going to be throughout the rest of this year, because clearly we've seen their top end looking pretty strong overall. I mean, they've taken games off of really, really good teams. I mean, they've got how many world championships between all of them? I mean, Nika and Vote, these side laners that have yet to find a world championship ring, but obviously have been a part of some of the best teams in the SPL of these last few years. No one's doubting the pedigree for this team. It's just a matter of them being able to put it together and how well they're meshing, and then their execution on top of that.
How important do you think it is Neoma being in the area with these guys? Now, Miff and I obviously joked, you can feel the Neoma presence just in state. You just know he's here somewhere. Vote joking, of course, about seeing his beady eyes or whatever it is, could be important for this team.
Look, I think that having Neil there, and we know it's Nika and Vote who have been living here, and having him be the third one here, I think is one of the better members that you could have brought over, because he's going to be working very closely with Vote in lane, so getting their synergy up and getting them on a closer page is going to be really good. It gives them a legitimate win condition out of their side lanes, which I think is something that they've really been lacking. I mean, obviously their mid 3v3 is where they've struggled the most, but having Nika not be your only win condition is a really good thing. So maybe they can start to play a little bit more duo-centric compositions, trying to get some early pressure and win through that way. And then having him be on the same page as Nika on those frontline dives and make sure that he can actually get there where he needs to be and execute mechanically, which has been a problem for him this year, I think is going to make a big difference for the Warriors.
And this Oni Warriors team down the stretch here does not have an easy Final Four sets to play. I mean, they've got the Camelot Kings, they've got the Valkyries, they've got the Bolts, they've got the Jade Dragons in their last 4. So top 2 spots we keep talking about after the initial round robin. You're gunning for those top 2 spots. You can select out all the different groups. If nothing else, you want to look competitive to get put in, I don't know, the easier group, however that might work out. So still have the ability to jump on up there, the Oni Warriors do, with 4 sets still yet to play. But starting off that final stretch of 4 games against the Camelot Kings, a team that has had a lot of success so far this phase, has had some stumbles.
Yep.
But a team that you expect to show up big every time they play.
Yeah, of course. I think the Kings this year have had a bit of a problem where they play to the level of their competition sometimes. And when you go against a team like the Warriors that has had their struggles and maybe you don't prepare quite as hard or aren't as locked in mentally for a game like this, and then maybe the Warriors wake up on the right side of the bed and you weren't ready for it and you kind of get punched in the mouth early on, that can cause some problems for a team like the Kings. But I think that their last set up against the Bolts, getting 2-0'd earlier this weekend, sometimes teams need wake-up calls.
Yep.
It happens. It's not the end of the world. It's still during the round-robin phase. If you're going to take losses, now is the time to do it.
Yep.
But hopefully that has revitalized this Kings team and made them think critically about how they want to approach these picks and bans. And already, I think I've seen a difference. I mean, they have Rom available for Netrioid in this game, and they pick Chiron instead. And I think that this is, if this was a must-win game, if they had to beat the Warriors in this game 1, they'd probably go Rom.
Sure.
But I think this is the time to make sure that we are up to speed on these other types of picks, and Chiron is the right look, I think, for Netrioid.
Yeah, what's our take on this Chiron? I mean, I don't think we need any more data on Uller because we have seen how absurd at the top level that this god can get played, largely around that mace build, the burst damage that's provided. I don't think can get understated. Chiron, absolutely a style of pick, as Vote getting run down here in the dual lane will leap away. Chiron, the type of pick that can utilize that build well as well.
Yeah, it goes Bluestone instead of Bumbas, which is interesting, but gives him a little bit more actual in-lane sustain. And I think it fits pretty well with what he wants to do, of course. When it was a Chiron meta earlier in the year, it was because he was going Bluestone constantly. I think that Chiron is really good, and I like him up against what the Oni Warriors have, because that cleanse is very good up against telegraphed CC, like, say, a Sylvanas route into Pull or a Stygian Torment. A lot of times you can cleanse those pretty easily. And he just becomes an artillery mage late game with the ultimate. I mean, it really is hard to deal with in these team fights when it's chaotic and you can't see where he's shooting from. But I'm a Chiron stan. I kind of always have been, maybe a little bit biased. I'm always looking at the glass half full for Chiron instead of half empty.
Yeah, I feel like I remember you, and this could be totally off base, because at the start of Season 8, Bluestone was all the conversation. Everyone wanted Bluestone, and Chiron shot out to the forefront. I will give you, not that you need any props, but I will give you props. I think prior to Season 8 starting, I remember you bucking for Chiron, and when Chiron came into the meta.
Yeah, he had a big buff that made him a lot more playable, like the knock-up immunity on the dash was a really big thing for him.
Right.
But I think when you can play Hunters in mid, Chiron is always going to be one of the premier ones because his wave clear is really good and his skirmishing is really good. And after he got that little extra bit of safety in the duo lane, and the fact that he can build Transcendence without having to stack or without having to worry about not rushing boots and that kind of stuff, like, all that made a pretty big deal for him overall.
Cubo Fred, I want to have a conversation around him, and we'll start off after he potentially and does successfully invade the purple buff. That's a solo invade for Cubo Fred. He'll get all of that XP for free. And his duo lane will go on back and pick up their purple alone. On the other side of the map, though, looks like a blue buff invade for the Camelot Kings. Going to force Nika back just a little bit here because Captain Twig is over on the right, and the blue buff will get taken away by the Kings. So split buff steals, purple on one side against the Kings, and blue on the other taken away against the Oni Warriors. Both junglers making some moves early in this one. Neomon low, it's a dash forward and a throwback from Netrioid. Shell gets used, and it looks like that'll save Neil's life.
Yeah, good shell pickup, and I like the shell quite a bit for Neil in a matchup like this, where you can get displaced and CC'd really, really easily. Sylvanas, it has a lot of strengths. I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen Sylvanas be first pickable, let alone playable in the SPL, and I think that he's definitely strong, but still has a lot of those same weaknesses, and I think that the Kings have done a good job of drafting around those weaknesses. He doesn't deal well with displacement, and you've got that with the Chiron and with the Susano, and he doesn't deal well with guaranteed ranged CC, and Artio brings that, Discordia can bring that, and it's not really ranged, but it's pretty guaranteed for Terra with the Monolith root combination. So I think that though all those things are really good counters to Sylvanas, and so I think the Kings have come insulated against this god's strengths. But Neil does a good job at not being greedy, not going Blink or Sunder or Bracer, none of these more offensive options. He goes something a little bit defensive because he knows that killing him is probably going to be a primary win condition here for the Kings.
Lotus Crown to start off for Neilma, so he'll have little extra power baked in to start off with his build here. I do want to return to the point about the junglers, though. I think both junglers in need of a good set here, maybe for similar reasons, maybe for different reasons. I think Captain Twig in the previous jungle metas proved that he could slot into that playstyle very well, set up for the rest of his team very well. And when I say previous, early Season 8 is what I mean. You know, the Erlang Shens, the Osirises, the Gilgamesh, all great for Captain Twig. And self-admitted, Twig has had some transitional pains getting back into the more assassin-y style of play. And so I think a Susano pick for Twig is going to go a long way in confidence in that playstyle. And on the flip side, Cubo Fred has had a tough year up to this point. Not the best, not the worst. But a player that the Oni Warriors will need to hit his stride moving forward in the next couple of months.
Absolutely. I mean, the Warriors, we were talking about how they can get hot at the right time and, you know, how big of a difference Neil being here is going to make. And a huge part of their success turnaround, if they have one, it's got to be Fred.
Fred's going to make his way to the mid lane here. He's got, oh, that's a nice strife from big man Tings. And maybe that momentary hesitation is enough to slow down Cubo Fred. So Genetics will live on here. Couple ultimates dropped in the mid lane, rather just the one. It's Genetics with that Earthen Fury. As Captain Twig is here on right. Some of that team fighting potential a little bit mitigated now. Genetics without that ultimate. Looks like both teams will stare at one another and stay on the other sides of the dance floor.
I wonder if this Kings draft is going to play out like they were in Phase 2.
Oh.
Maybe not.
Hello, Cubo Fred. He'll blink forward and unsuccessful in his attempted steal away of the Scorpion. Twig had the ult down just to make sure of it. Look, I mean, hey, maybe if you're not roaring for a gank in the next 2 minutes, worthwhile to spend that blink to get in there.
Yeah, I think that overall, neither of these teams have shown me a huge propensity to being aggressive early on. And that's where I was about to go, is that when Genetics kind of brought this Terra pick into the meta earlier on this year, it was part of this wave of patience for this team and being willing to take it to the mid to late game and only worry about our 5-on-5. And a lot of times it was Twig on these more early game assassins in that sort of idea, you know, put him on Osiris or Erlang Shen or Raven and let him just be our insurance policy against getting steamrolled early. But let's give Variety something late game, let's give Genetics something late game, and let's just get there and win because our front line is going to be stronger. And I think that this draft kind of reminds me of that identity. You've got Discordia, who is going to help you in the early game by way of her passive, but really wants to get to 4 or 5 items and team fight well and cause some disruption there. Chiron, very good in these little scraps, but also good when it comes to team fighting. The Kings aren't going to leave home with a draft that doesn't team fight well. You know, they're playing to what their roster's strength is. It's a matter of if the Warriors are going to either build themselves a draft that can counteract that in the later stages, which I think their draft scales well, but not as well as the Kings. Or are they going to actually put enough pressure on the Kings to crack them in the early game and give themselves a significant lead? And that's where I'm not really sure, because the Warriors just haven't done that a whole lot this year.
I do think playing to their strength is a good way of wording what the Warriors have done with Dardes with a few of the priorities as far as picks and bans have gone. Because you think back to last year and Dardes and 3 out of 5 pieces of this Oni Warriors team for SSG and how strong that team truly was. Dardes was at the forefront of that mid lane conversation for a lot of the year. Has had his struggles here in Season 8. But it feels like when the Warriors have gone back to picks like this in the Hera, you get a glimpse again at some of that vintage Dardes and the Oni Warriors that, you know, they show up big in games like that. And I think I admire their lack of nervousness, I guess, at going back to picks like that, because there's a pretty established tier list right now in the mid lane. Hera's far from the top of it. But when you attach Dardes names to it, I think it gets a little bit of a boost here. Neoma locked in place. He'll drop his ultimate, but Argus rains from the sky as well. First blood goes to Genetics. It's the immobile Sylvanas that just gets taken out. Captain Twig being chased down by Argus here. Cubo Fred out of nowhere blinks forward and gets the return kill.
That Argus actually giving Fred vision of what was going on, or at least information for Dardes to relay to him. So it ends up being a 1-for-1. The Kings get the first blood. The Warriors get the more valuable kill onto the jungler as opposed to the support. But you see the gold lead already starting to materialize here for the Kings. The Warriors just not doing enough
yeah,
to keep
you're
them
right.
off balance.
Yeah, it has been quiet for 9.5 minutes of this game, and already 1.5K in the lead are the Camelot Kings. Genetics grabs first blood in the game, but then a return kill here for Cuvo Fred. And I think the Nemesis has been in a pretty interesting spot here as blue buff invaded, but Nico will be able to pick that one up. Nice strife, actually, over the wall from big man Tings. Genetics is close by here. Don't think there's enough damage to engage on that. But I think a similar conversation that I guess I was having about Dardes on this area. You could maybe talk about BMT.
Oh, man.
Unfortunate for Neilma. He is locked in place here. Just no chance. The apple goes out, and the apple puts him down. Big man Tings grabs the second of the game for the Kings and the first for the Discordia.
And it's already a level or 2-level lead for Genetics, and it's just going to keep getting worse because this is what I was talking about earlier, these positive matchups up against this Sylvanas. I mean, Genetics just brings the cage. You build your own Odin cage in that moment, and it's just strictly better because you can't get out. Your auto attacks can't get you out. No teammates auto attack can get you out. You're just locked in for a long time, and everyone for the Kings are like, "Oh yeah, we can kill that guy. Thanks, Genetics. We can get that done for you." Really good play by him, and that's just twice in a row where Neil has moseyed on up to the support and instantly gotten killed for it. And the Warriors don't really have the best pile-in type of composition, and the Kings want you to pile in. You know, if you want to try and toss your body in there to try and dissuade the enemy team from hitting your support when he gets trapped, the Kings are happy to have you there because they've got great AoE. Typhoon, Strife, the Golden Apple. I mean, they've got so much to really punish you, and the Terra Ultimate. I mean, they want you grouped up. So Neil has got to be a little bit closer to the rest of his team, and that's been a major problem for the Warriors, is that Neil oftentimes is getting caught out, but I really think it's because the rest of the team is playing so far back. I mean, think about how far back Fred was in that fight around the red buff and just waiting and waiting for the right moment. Sometimes you got to create your own right moments, and I think that's something that the Warriors have been lacking.
I wonder if that's why picks like the Kuzenbo feel so good for Neil, because you know you want to be up front, right? You want to be in the back line. You want to be disrupting it
and
as
you're
good as you can.
mobile, and it's hard to get punished on that pick. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's where Neilma has looked some of his best. This game far from over, but it has not been the best start for Neilma just yet on this Sylvanas. Blue buff has been under the eye of the Camelot Kings a couple of times. Variety tried to solo invade a moment ago. Captain Twig had paid some attention over here on right. Earlier on today, Miff and I, when we were on the desk, we were having this conversation about Ardio, how got to be close to 100% pick ban, and maybe for the first time so far since she's really come in to the meta earlier on today, didn't see a pick or a ban, but Variety on this pick certainly demands a lot of attention. And he'll demand enough attention here that the Lonely Warriors won't be able to step up, and the Pyromancer gets taken down. 3K gold in the lead are the Kings, 12.5 minutes in.
And this is what we want to see more of from the Kings. This more activity early on. They're being early to these objectives, and when the Kings are on point, this is what they look like. They're early to these objectives. They're playing around them consistently and not just waiting for the game to come to them. They're not walking into the Warriors jungle and going heavy on invades or anything like that. They're just at every neutral camp. They're at every neutral spawn, and they're aggressive in defending their buffs, not being on the offensive.
Captain Twig had to avoid the pull there from Neilma. There is the ability to kind of chain up some CC here. Neilma gets a pull, he gets stunned from Boat. Boat might not be able to stun out here, though, if he's going to get jumped on like this. Twig has taken so much damage, and Neilma has turned his fate around. He's gotten a kill on the board now for the Oni Warriors. Kivo Fred into the back line. Big man Tings dances around in the stealth. Aegis used. 1 for none. The Oni Warriors feeling okay.
That's a big play, and it's centered around Vote in particular, who was up 2 levels on Netroid going into that fight, maintains that 2-level lead. The Warriors are not winning anywhere else, but they got to play around this Uller, giving themselves an actual win condition now.
Gold Fury down beneath half HP. Netroid around to the corner. Genetics a bit further outside of the pit. Walls go up from Genetics, and they will not crash together around the Gold Fury. And the Oni Warriors trying to turn this game around. They've done a good job of it so far, but now Variety on the Ardio can wreak absolute havoc. Apple onto Cubo Fred, and Variety will finally chase down Dardes. And that health bar still feeling just fine. Big re-engage from Genetics. In goes Neoma, down he goes on the end of it, and Vote left running.
Just when you thought the Warriors were going to start clawing back, Variety goes, no, it's me who has the claws. He's
That's
a bear, you see, on Ardio, half the time at the very least, and has a beautiful re-engage. And this Hera has looked very good in the moments where she's able to use her range a little bit and then step up and follow up off a CC chain. But Ardio is just a character that nearly invalidates Hera in the later stages of the game, because that long-range route is just impossible for her to deal with unless she can land a max-range polymorph staring down the barrel of it, which obviously Variety isn't going to let happen. And if you ever get jumped on like Dardes did there, you're just toast, because Variety can stick to you like glue so easily.
Man, it feels like some high-tier picks got let through that we're not used to seeing here. I mean, I'm looking at it now. Get the Ardio on one side, the Terra for Genetics, Vote on the Uller, and Nika on Cerberus. And I guess when you have two teams where a handful of the players on either team demand very specific pick bans against them, you tend to get put into situations like this. And the Oni Warriors have shown some fight given their good composition here, but those are the moments where the Camelot Kings are able to turn these games around, give themselves the big advantage. And you don't love seeing a 2-level lead for the Ardio out of the solo lane. Still a 2-level lead for Vote. Maybe on the left side of the map you can make something happen. We're going to be fighting right around Neoma, who is missing. I take that back, and the Camelot Kings have picked this Sylvanas for 4 out of 5 kills.
Yeah, that was a really nice play from Twig. He pulls in Neil and then instantly jet streams away, knowing that Neil is so low on options once he gets pulled in that he kind of has to use his ultimate. And then once he does, he just goes right back in and typhoons him and knocks him up. Well played by Twig, using the mobility of the Susano. And it's the same thing as before. I mean, the Warriors are a little focused on red buff. Whether that's over-focus or Neil overextending, I think in this case it's probably the latter. That probably shouldn't have been a fight for the Warriors because Vote didn't have his relics at the time, and he is your win condition now. I mean, it is Variety versus Vote on who's going to be able to do more, because they're the only two players on the map at level 17, and who is going to be able to actually handle the other when it comes to the team fighting time. And if Vote doesn't have relics, we shouldn't be fighting. You know, we'll take a quick little invade and get out. And maybe Neil thought that it's worth his life in order to get that extra farm for the Warriors, but probably needs to stay alive a little bit more, as 4 deaths in 16, nearly 17 minutes is a unsustainable pace.
I don't really want to cast my ballot against either an Uller or an Ardio, given the way that they've both performed here in recent metas. Twig will dash away here. That animation looks eerily close to a blink, and so I thought he had just blinked away, but nope. This is a good old teleport away there from the Susano. Been quiet from Cubo Fred since that early kill. Still maintains level 14, so parity with Captain Twig. Into the Jotuns, the Brawler's Beat Stick. Looks like an Erendite after that. Maybe this Nemesis, maybe the ultimate is where you find some breathing room. You drop it on Variety and it gives you a chance in these fights.
But yeah, very possible. It's an easy way to take down this Ardio, who I think is going to be very difficult to kill for at least a little bit longer. Vote needs to get another item at least.
Vote able to avoid the stun there from Genetics. It is a pullback through from Neomamba. Big man Tings is going to dash away. And the Oni Warriors have loved this look at the red buff invade, and it has not gone fantastically for themselves on the last couple of chances. But they still group up. They add some pressure here on left. Maybe you just, as long as the Ardio is somewhere else, and we're fighting around Vote, we still feel like we've got a chance.
Yeah, some tenacity being shown by the Warriors, not backing away after a couple of skewed invades don't go their way, but it isn't amounting to that much. Still keeping Vote in the lead, but that lead is shrinking a tiny bit. Is Netroid now at 17, though Vote hits 19, so pretty much staying exactly the same.
Neil is caught up, though.
Neil's caught up. The lead is still there for Variety, as Nika has also rotated a little early a couple times to make sure that these invades don't turn into more without him being present.
Pyromancer for the Camelot King, secured. It's a pull out from Neoma onto Variety, but do you really want to pull the Ardio into the rest of your team? Stygian Torment from Nika will send Netroid right on back. The Chiron is low, and Cubo Fred's going to call him on it. Centaurus out, but I don't think the execute's on the other side of it. Captain Twig's got one onto Neil. And Netrioid ends up falling, running away from Argus as Captain Twig, and they'll make it a 1-for-1 trade.
Well, Nika had good damage there on the Tings, but just didn't have the stun up and available. So it's 1-for-1, but you get the Aegis out from Netrioid and his death just for Neil, who is now 1-5, clearly not worth very much in the Golden Experience department. That's another positive trade for the Oni Warriors, and that's without their strongest member there. Well, the Kings had their strongest member there. Vote wasn't in that fight, but Variety was. And the fact that the Warriors come out marginally ahead, even though it's only marginally, should give them a lot of confidence. That once Vote
ahead
comes
is
in,
ahead.
He has Bumba's spear already, by the way. So once he's there,
yeah, he does, doesn't
he should be doing some pretty significant lifting.
I guess that's why I was so surprised with how many good picks got let through here. And Vote does feel like someone who's going to make this pick look good. Unfortunately, Captain Twig kind of doing it to him right now. Oh my God! I've never been more wrong in my entire life. In one moment, I'm so incorrect. Vote does do it to him, and Captain Twig falls. I backed up on that too. I said, Vote feels like someone who's going to do it. And then Captain Twig, I'm like, nah, Captain Twig's doing it. And then my original point stands. That is gross from Vote.
Oh, what I mean. I don't have a lot of words for that moment.
Good news is there's a fight maybe breaking out here in the mid lane. Neilma no good with his pull. Genetics into the back. That's a big Earthen Fury. Stygia and Torment out. Neilma gets the knockup, and Variety will get the 6th kill of the game on the Oni Warrior support. Cuba Fred's got to leave. He's been pivotal in fighting some of those late fight executes. Variety will claw down Dardes for a second of the fight. It's a big turnaround in the mid for the Kings.
Oh, stun on the Tings!
Whoa.
Nearly just deletes some Tings held onto the relics. That is some tight-fisted grip on your beads whenever Vote stuns you at this point in the game. He still has 2 items to go, by the way. He's going to get Heartseeker and Titan's Bane still, and he is going to start absolutely deleting people. But then the Kings are able to bounce back and make a big play afterwards. But this is what I got to see.
I love that we get it from this point of view.
Yeah, exactly. Nearly finds that axe, but doesn't. Good patience to make sure he doesn't get rooted. It's this little 360, 417, 441. Yeah, quick maths, that's his whole health bar.
That is his whole health bar. That is nuts. Nuts from Vote. Panda Cat was doing it the other day on this pick. Some guys who just make this Uller look different. And at least in that moment, Vote shows why he's a couple levels ahead of Netrioid here on this Chiron. Though that XP gap is going to shrink. Still feeling fine as far as gold goes for Vote. A little bit further on in the build than where Netrioid is. So the game plan has been clear for a little while. You got to keep Vote alive and involved in some of these fights. Nika wants to engage. Captain Twig will use the beats. Down he goes. Typhoon is out for some peel onto the front line. How's Argus going to impact this fight? Well, it's going to disrupt Variety.
Nice stun.
A little bit good. Stun out and a good pull back from Neilma. And Variety has been CC'd to all hell. No chance for the RDO to play, and Dardes adds 1.
And that's the easiest way for this to work for the Warriors, is that they've got a really good CC chain on this front line. They put good pressure on your beads as it is. And if they can lock you down, they've got good enough DPS to make you pay. And that's where, you know, in the mid game where I'm saying Vote needs a couple more items before it can start to happen, Variety had the lead in the sense that he wasn't going to get 5-on-1 and have his team not there to punish. But the Warriors CC chain is potent enough. It's enough knockups. It's enough polymorph. Remember, polymorph doesn't get DR'd. So you're eating that full duration that says on Hera's tooltip whether or not you've been stunned 16 times in a row before that. And you've got all this prot shred coming from Nika on this Cerberus. I think it's a good sort of mentality or setup for the Warriors to be able to handle this RDO now. But I'm curious to see if the Kings can start to punish. Twig has got to get in there alongside Variety, and that's going to be a tough tightrope to walk because he can't be getting hit by all this CC, but he needs to get in there and disrupt. He needs to be in there and actually trying to stop the DPS. You can let Variety get CC'd over and over again. It only matters if Vote and Dardes are able to consistently hit him.
Well, the good news is for the Camelot Kings, and Vote has been the buzzword of the game so far, and how much damage and how far along in the build that Vote is. Netrioid on the Chiron has gotten to a similar point in the build, a couple, or maybe really just the one difference there in the middle with Crusher instead of Brawler's Beat Stick. But Heartseeker now there. for Netrioid as well. I don't know if the rotation from Chiron is quite as potent as the one is out of Uller. But as far as build goes, Netrioid in an okay spot as far as being able to impact the fights on a similar level to Vote.
Yeah, getting close. I mean, doesn't have the starter item upgrade, but
That's a good point.
overall, I mean, you're still hit level 20. You still do a ton of base damage with your ultimate from this position. You can put a lot of pressure onto Vote, and that's who he should really be hunting with these ultimate shots, because if they're going to all coalesce on top of Variety, if everyone's buttons are going the Bears' way, they shouldn't be able to juke you super well. And if you've got good enough vision or good enough instincts on where they're going to be, you might be able to make a play that way and try and put, you won't 100-0 Vote. Even if you hit all 3 in Masterful Shot, it'll chunk him really hard, but with Aegis, he'll live for sure if he uses it. But even just chunking him, because this build doesn't go Lifesteal. He's got Lifesteal in Axe form, but it's not a ton. If you can chunk him enough, that could change the course of the fight for sure for the Kings.
And the Oni Warriors now right back in this game. I mean, it was 3,000 and then some for the Camelot Kings. Now just above 1,000, 1.5K. The gold lead has been halved. There is a Primal Fury spawning on left. There's a Fire Giant as well on right. Looks like ward coverage good enough from both teams that there won't be a sneak on the FG. Oracles are around this Primal Fury, so there won't be a sneak on the Fury either. And these are those kind of tense fights, Aggro, where the game is close enough. The Kings still have this gold lead. Of course, you'd like to get the Fury. You don't want to throw away the entire game. One bad Fury fight, and suddenly the Kings or the Warriors are just that much further ahead if it goes that bad. And so it is always a delicate dance. I'd love to be a fly on the wall as far as comms go. Right now, the more aggressive positioning is for the Kings with Genetics up front.
And I like him pinging out exactly where Vote is. They've got no mistake on who target number 1, public enemy number 1 is from the Camelot Kings perspective. They are tracking him absolutely through these jungle fights. And this Primal Fury actually matters quite a bit because neither of these teams have great objective DPS nor great objective confirm.
Yeah, good point.
And when you have neither, 7% on your damage and on your ability to take less damage from the objective can make a pretty big difference. Now, overall, I think it's probably the Warriors with a better DPS just because they have the Prot Tread from Serb. Actually, I don't know. Discordia is not bad among mages because you can just sit in your little bubble and press buttons over and over and over again, but I think that Nemesis should be slightly better than Susano. Bluestone Brute versus Bumba Spear, both of them help you quite a bit on objectives, but have to imagine that Bumba Spear is a little bit better there.
Yeah, worth looking at the mid lane and their build up to this point. Chronos Pendant, Divine Ruin, and Soul Reaver, the start for both. But then it's an Ob Shard for BMT and a Soul Gem for Dardes down the stretch. So you get a little sustain, a little burst of healing and damage for Dardes. But that percent pen's going to be feeling good for BMT.
Yeah, for BMT, but not for Dardes. Dardes has 0% pen through 4 items. And he's going to go back and probably finish a starter. The Kings just waltz in and unceremoniously take the Primal Fury. Some desynced backs there from the Warriors exploited nicely by the Kings. This build, I mean, Dardes is 27 minutes in and has 0% pen. Now, you get percentage damage increase off of Polymorph. They take 10% more damage whenever they're polymorphed, and that feels good. But if the plan is we got to kill Variety whenever he goes in, or we got to kill Genetics whenever he goes in, which is always that's always part of the plan of Smite. You hit whoever's in front of you. It's the most efficient way to play, and whoever's in front of you is going to be someone with a lot of protections. Can't say I'm a big fan of going 0% pen through 28 minutes.
Still one open slot for Dardes. Could be Obchart or something similar to finalize the build, but it is certainly not here, at least not yet. Big man Tings has hit that power spike, though. So we will shift our eyes now to the right side of the map. It is unceremonious as the Primal Fury was, and that's a good word for it. We're getting close. You know, with how slow we kind of were in that Primal Fury, there is a world aggro where this Fire Giant dance lasts a minute and a half, and we're looking at an enhanced Fire Giant 30 minutes in.
Oh, yeah.
And with the map state now, that is a huge difference. One tower missing on, or rather 2 tier 1 towers missing on the Oni Warrior side of the map. That's a great pull from Neoma. Variety will walk away from this one, though. And a good start to the fight for the Oni Warriors. He'd love to get that kill, but at least making Variety's health bar a little bit lower.
Got his beads as well. It did cast Fred his ultimate, but he's got 30% CDR. That's That's not a huge investment from him. That was really sick from Neil, and does make a big difference. And you see part of the reason why Dardes might feel like he doesn't need the percent pen, because he's got the Nemesis ultimate to shred percent protections for him. But you know what's really good to kill tanks is taking like all of their protections.
Yeah, that's great.
And not just some of them.
Not just some of them. Ooh, nearly another pull for Neilma. You can suddenly tell the Oni Warriors starting to push a little bit further forward. Pyromancer is low here, and the Warriors will steal it away. I think it's Nika who gets that one. Doesn't matter who gets it, except for the fact that it's the Oni Warriors. Not a massive swing.
No.
Definitely doesn't feel great for the Camelot Kings. You got to survive on the back end, though. That's important. Nika gets a lot in the Stygian Torment, but Big Man Tings deletes Neilma. Nika, his health bar's missing as well. And now it's Variety running down Dardes on left. Vote running away on right. Bad fight now for the Oni Warriors if the Kings are able to run him down.
Genetics may have bit off a little bit too much, but it just doesn't matter because the rest of the fight is so good for the Camelot Kings, and that's exactly what they needed to do. The Netrioid's ultimate did insane work in that fight. Was hitting Dardes, was hitting Vote, but look, no, Twig gets caught shopping by Vote once again.
We've seen that.
Yeah, I think Twig's gonna send a message to Vote that maybe should go past Cooper first after this set. He has really been causing him problems. But that's a huge death actually for the Kings to take, because they should have been able to reset and go fire very easily from that position. Neil got one shot, didn't get his shell off, didn't get his ultimate off. That was really worst case scenario for the Oni Warriors, who I think may have lost their patience a little bit with that engagement from Nika. He got a lot.
Yeah, he got beads.
But these fights are just so quick in the later stages that getting beads at 30 minutes isn't always enough. You know, you've got to be able to get beads while staying safe, and Nika could never do that from that position.
You know, we're already 45 seconds back to Captain Twigs. Variety will be there in 30 seconds, minute and a half on Netrioid. Where Big Man Tings was plenty safe that entire fight.
He used his ult instead, which was very smart, because then it's guaranteed to hit Nika anyways. I mean, he's barrel stuffing him from that position, which made it very simple.
And he finishes his build in a bit of a different order from Dardes. He goes Obshard and then into that Soul Gem. So you get the burst from Soul Gem anyway. But you got the Obshard online a little bit earlier. Full 5 versus 5, all 10 players back on the map. There is an enhanced Fire Giant now out and standing with the Camelot Kings, given how the last fight went. Able to work a little bit further forward here, drop some of that ward coverage deep on the Oni Warrior side of the jungle. Feels like the starts of these fights, Aggro, have been, if Neilma can find a great pull, then you're able to collapse on that. Otherwise, you're hoping Nika with his blink in 10 seconds can get some value with that Stygian Torment, but 3 of the 4 sets of beads are already back.
Yeah, and look at the beads, the situation, or relic situation in general for the Warriors. It isn't great.
Yeah, not much better. Enhanced Fire Giant started up by the Camelot Kings. Vote is going to continue to rain down damage from the back here, about the best that he can do. Stun onto Variety. Genetics walks forward. That would have been a big stun onto Vote. But Vote is able to walk on out of it. Camelot Kings drop the Enhanced Fire Giant here. This kind of continued range whittling down of the health bar seems to be doing okay for the Oni Warriors. Vote has hit some damage, Dardes has as well. And so if Genetics is able to group up with his team, those health bars will be just fine at the end of it. But kind of the initial poking and prodding has felt okay for the Warriors.
Interesting that Genetics has Blink as his second relic, because we haven't seen it since like Wave 2, whatever. He blinked on Vote and tried to make it happen there. He tried to blink in and kill Nika at the very end of that last fight, but that obviously didn't work. It doesn't seem like the Kings want to be the initiators, and for good reason. I don't think they really need to be. The way the Warriors want to initiate these fights is so static around Neilma's pools, and if he's in pull range, he's in root range. So that's something we have to respect a whole lot.
Twig plus Netrioid equals Oni Fury for the Camelot Kings. That's why the Oni Warriors walk up just a little bit further now. They clear out some of that ward coverage. But immediately back to their side of the jungle. You have to look at waves. How are the waves pushing and pulling? No exposed Phoenixes, no existing fire minion waves, so no bases really under threat in moments like this. It's really all on Oni Warriors or the Camelot Kings to find that engagement. But it looks like a bit of a scattering here, Aggro, and we'll go back to farming, maybe finalize some of those builds, get our supports a little bit closer to level 20.
I think that since the Oni Fury got introduced, this is the least impactful 33-minute Oni Fury I've ever seen. Because normally this would put some pressure on a Phoenix
or something, right?
Or so, you know, there would be a lot of even putting pressure on a tier 2 and opening up a Phoenix line. I don't think the Warriors have to respect this left side Oni wave at all.
No?
It'll get tier 1. I don't think it gets tier 2. And even if it does get tier 2, it gets gobbled up before it gets to Phoenix. Now, opening up a Phoenix line is big for the Kings if that does happen, but I don't know. I'm not an Oni Fury expert, but I've watched a lot of them from this position. I feel pretty confident.
You'd figure the Oni Warriors would be an Oni
Right,
Fury
you would think
expert,
so.
but they're the ones fighting against it right
Interesting.
now. So a couple of the minions make their way to the tier 1 on left. But not worried about it is really the way to boil that down. The Warriors don't really have to be concerned about the left side of the map. Tier 1 does end up falling. Only a couple of those Oni minions remaining here as another minion wave from the Warriors reaches out and stops the Kings wave where it's at. Fire Giant started back up by the Camelot Kings. Nika has been playing aggressively, as you should on the Cerberus, burning down some of those health bars. Nice strife, but it's immediately leapt out of by Nika. Fire Giant is half HP here. The Camelot Kings kind of a half-hearted commitment onto the FG, and their hearts will turn and they'll back out of the pit.
And there's sustain on both ends, so all this poking doesn't really amount to too much on either end, even though it is fairly significant between these, Sundering Axe procs and Uller poke and all that good stuff. It is good damage numbers, but it's not actually going to stick to anyone on either side. Found it kind of interesting that Fred blinked away from Twig as he was clearing out that mid wave, because he had Magi's up. And that Wind Siphon was only going to get the Magi's. So normally you would think, oh, I want to expend the shorter cooldown in this moment, which is Magi's by like double. It comes up twice as fast as that blink, but Fred uses the blink anyways, so a bit surprised. But his Magi's is on cooldown now, so clearly got some value out of it in that skirmish.
Well, the big thumbs up I think that we give to Dardez is that it ends up being an ob shard at the end of the build, but I'm not going to get a chance to talk about it. Big stun from Nika on a Captain Twig, but vote target number 1. He's way low on HP and Variety.
Dead.
Walking beneath the tier 2 tower, Stygian Torment slows down the RDO, but there's genetics there as well, and the health bar's dwindling for the Oni Warriors here, but Netroid low as well. Cubo Fred around the corner gets the stun, but the gallop away is enough. Nika from range, no good. Variety has run down Cubo Fred in the meantime. Nika is going to turn tail and head on out. Big Man Tings here around the corner, sends out a strife, and it's a 2-for-none. Kings ahead.
Huge play by the Kings because they take Vote out first, and you saw Vote's frustration in the player cams right afterwards. He's tapping his head thinking, what am I doing? How does that happen? Because he knows he's such a critical linchpin for how these fights are going to play out. Just too easy for the Kings to get that damage onto him, and it's that ultimate from Netroid, like we were talking about 10, 12, 15 minutes ago.
Yep.
That really makes the difference.
This game now broken wide open. The Camelot Kings win a big fight. 6,000 gold plus in the lead. Enhanced Fire Giant on all 5. 36 minutes in, you're still waiting for Cubo Fred for 15 seconds. Left side tier 2 does still stand, and that wave is pushed very far up. Good job by the Oni Warriors, but barreling down the right lane are the Camelot Kings.
Remember, this is only the first Fire Giant of the game for the Kings, but you have to remember the last fight around this Fire Giant that the Kings won, but then Twig got picked afterwards, and so it didn't amount to an actual FG. But both fights have been won by the Kings, and it's been really the same way. The Warriors just have not been able to have good, clean initiations. It's because this front line from the Kings has been very savvy around these Sylvanas pools. They have not gotten caught by that. That's been a big factor for them.
Yeah, 11 out of 12 affected kills for Genetics, 10 out of 12 affected kills for Variety. 416 on your RDO. That's going to be tough to beat. Now he's got a Mantle of Discord. Maybe even had a Mantle of Discord, just haven't seen it procced yet.
I saw him somehow.
On the back end of that build. Visualized are the Oni Warriors, and they'll have to drop away. You're losing a fight around an Enhanced Fire Giant. I doubt you take this fight around the Primal Fury. The Camelot Kings are just going to make sure that there are no pesky Oni Warriors hanging around. Or even looking for the Fury at this point. Why not just take down the tier 2 tower?
Yeah, Primal Fury matters so little right now to the Camelot Kings. This is the right call. Go for Phoenixes. I mean, you've got an EFG. Your first Fire Giant meant to set you up, not necessarily to end the game. Your first EFG, we're trying to end.
Yeah, could end.
You can skip those.
Could end. Nika, Neoma, they're forward. Watch out for the pull from this Sylvanas, and it's on to Genetics, and a lot of damage pours into the Terra. Terra will dash away. Some sustain, remember, on the back side of this fight here. Not a tick of damage on the left side Phoenix just yet. There is a wave approaching the right side exposed Phoenix, and mid lane Phoenix open as well. So the Camelot Kings will send all 5 to the left with a bit of a floater here in Captain Twig between left and mid. Looks like one 5-man grouping to left to maybe end this game.
Interesting that Twig is here. I think he might win that 1v1 up against Fred, but doesn't try and split it.
Oh, Genetics is into the back, and there's the Earthen Fury, and this fight has started. It's a pull back through, but Twig immediately back out. Look at Variety. He's just walked into the back line and forced everyone out from the Oni Warriors. A good ultimate, though, from Cubo Fred onto Captain Twig. Keeps the Susano out of melee range. Genetics melted through, and it's Vote on the kill.
And both teams just having so many troubles getting fights started in the right way. I mean, it's a blink Earthen Fury from the Terra, and the Warriors are just so spread out. They don't have to stress about it. They don't get hit by any follow-up CC. There's no follow-up blink coming from the rest of the squad until a few seconds later, and it's on a different part of the fight. The Kings just not able to match that same pressure.
Oh, he's got him! What a read from Big Man Tings. Vote walk forward, and BMT dropped the strife.
2-tapped him.
Sent out the one, the old 2-tap for BMT. Might do it again to Dardes. Camelot Kings find picks on both of the carries of the Oni Warriors, and they got the Phoenix in the mid lane. Nika, Cubo, Fred, Neoma, the last 3 alive. The Camelot Kings, they have enhanced Fire Giant on 4 for the next 40 seconds.
Imagine thinking you can just walk into Big Man Tings' jungle and not get summarily punished. That is crazy.
Captain Twig takes the ult from Cubo. Fred here sends out the Typhoon, but he loses that fight. Pretty big, actually, for the Oni Warriors to get that one, but you still got Netrioid pushing down right Phoenix. All 3 Phoenixes will fall. It looks like the Camelot Kings happy with what they've got.
So I didn't get a chance to point it out before that siege, but there's a pretty big thing that Big Man Tings bought. It was a 3K potion. He spent 3,000 gold to just get % power, and it let him do this. You see, he's got 1,000 power.
I can't tell if Vote was trying to do the same thing.
He was. Yeah, he's hunting Big Man, trying to see if he's... So he shows his back animation right there to make Vote think he's backing.
That's Soul Gem proc too.
Yes, sir. See ya. Literal 2-tap.
Good night. Luckily, Vote is back on the map.
Hey, Ullr's better than all mages, by the way. Just so we're all on the same page. You know, I just don't want anyone to look at that and think, wow, mages are really broken.
Yeah, it's moments like that where you're nervous that suddenly all the mages are going to get nerfed. And
I mean, he had 6 items and an EFG and a 3K pot. If he's not 2-tapping people, why are you picking him?
That's right. It's a good point for Big Man Tings. He's 3-0-8. You still got power pots.
Top player
rolling.
damage, by the way.
Top player damage on this Discordia. I'll take my own passive. Thank you very much. Closest is Dardes, who's at 22,000. And then just a couple thousand between the rest as we drop back down. 41 minutes into this one. Oni Warriors versus Kings. It's going long in game 1. There's another enhanced Fire Giant here in just a moment, and 3 Phoenixes down for the Oni Warriors.
Hello.
Maybe it's your best chance. You take a fight outside your own base, but Vote misses the execute. He'll get pulled back in. Dardes finishes off the kill anyway, and the Oni Warriors get away with 1. Looks like they'll lose 1 in exchange.
But Netrioid gets picked up,
dug
down by Argus.
It's a double kill from Dardes on the re-engage. Strife is out for Big Man Tings, dancing in the bubble to get those cooldowns right back off. Variety ripping through the front line. In the back, Vote pouring out the damage, and he's got one onto Variety. 3 Phoenixes down, no problem. Oni Warriors get 3.
Unbelievable play by the Warriors. It doesn't win them the game because there's too many towers still standing, but that might have bought them all 3 Phoenixes in that moment. Love that play from Vote, who just says, hey man, it didn't work the last time. I'm going to try and do it again, but Dardes can't get caught here by Big Man Ting. Someone pings him out, and Dardes will be able to back up. Doesn't get greedy for that red buff. An unbelievable game, and the Warriors have some life down 3 Phoenixes because left side Phoenix is going to be up for sure.
Yeah.
Mid Phoenix is going to get close, and then all they really have to worry about is your right.
Do they have time
Phoenix.
to do this, you think? 15 on Netrioid, 5 on Twig,
Yeah.
30 on Variety.
Yeah, I think they might.
We're thinking about Phoenixes, and for good reason, but Fire Giant's still standing there. Big Man Tings, we've seen the damage that this Discordia can do. Will the Oni Warriors back off now that the Kings know that this is being done? That's the question. The answer is no. Neomar, clapped in, Apple out. Goodbye, Neomar. Big Man Tings deletes him, but Vote. He's still on the enhanced Fire Giant here. Dardes over to the left. The damage is there, but the Camelot Kings are the ones who get it. The Oni Warriors, the tug of war, the back and forth. And more recently, we're going 4th towards the Camelot Kings.
Look, man, the Warriors in the situation they're in, they've got to roll hot. You know, they've got to roll hot. That's their only option. And so they have to take risk after risk after risk in order to stay in it. And so you might look at Vote like he's crazy for staying on that EFG, but that was a tool to maybe be able to stall the game to get to the point where they can actually win it. So I've got no problem with him trying to make the play. You just got to tip your hat to big man Tings, who does it to him again.
And for a moment, it looks like the Oni Warriors have control wrestled back. Anything but now. The Camelot Kings have all 5 members. 4 of them have enhanced fire. Giant Nika is going to be the first casualty here. Big man Tings lives on, but not for much longer. Cubo Fred gets that one, but it's a double kill from both of the junglers here. And so the Oni Warriors lose a couple. Dardas is still on the map, but can you say so for much longer? Genetics runs down Cubo Fred, and the Hera will trot on back to base. The Camelot Kings, they've got the legs, and they've got the win in 45 minutes.
Look, the Warriors made them work for that one. You don't see many teams struggle that much after getting the enemy team's 3 Phoenixes, but a really well-played sequence from the Warriors. Big man Tings just shuts them down, man. What else can you say? Top player damage, only has the 1 death there at the very end, secures and steals away that EFG that the Warriors are trying to sneak away. Really impressive stuff from him in particular, but overall, I think I'm kind of impressed with what the Warriors were able to do despite the loss.
And I think it was literally week 1 of Phase 3 where the Warriors showed up in this style. I mean, just being competitive in these games, because this was a team in all the rest of Season 8. They've kind of beat up on the lower half of the league, not without their struggles, of course, but kind of got goose-egged against the top half of the league, it felt like.
Yep.
Still not without a win here against the Camelot Kings, but this one not out of reach. Game number 2 after a 45-minute win for the Camelot Kings right after this.
I gave up dabbing for Lynn.
Cool. No more dabbing for Final. He looked at me and said, I'm going to be on that stage next year. I'm going to become a world champion.
Rimming through, Titan, down, ball 3, a double cover.
That's right. Shop.smiteproleague.com is where you can go to get all of your SPL merchandise, whether you want to get some of that neutral Smite Pro League gear, like the hoodies or the t-shirts, or if you want to pick up the new joggers or mouse pads, you can pick those up there as well. There's all kinds of ones available for you, one for every single team with the logo in kind immediately right next to it, and then there's also the custom mouse pads for each individual team. So pick out whichever one is your favorite and pick one of those up. Thank you so much to Inside Apparel for providing all of this great SPL merchandise, especially these new joggers and these mouse pads. We talk about them a lot, but man, every single time I look at them, I just keep wondering which one am I going to pick. I'm going to sit here for probably 2 more weeks and just go, man, which one do I really want, especially out of these mouse pads, man? They're so difficult to choose from. I think it's the first time I've seen the Oni Warriors one. That one's kind of sick with the little katana right up there in the middle. But shop.smartproleague.com if you want to pick up your own jogger or mouse pad. Oni Warriors make a nice little fight here against the Camelot Kings in game number 1. At the end of the day, it is the Kings who come out on top. And I'm just going to say, man, today, and not just in that game at the very end, but throughout the entirety of the SPL, it just felt like that meme, man, where it's just like, it's like you made this, I made this. You started this objective, well, this is my objective. And that's kind of how it falls at the very end of game number 1 there.
I mean, yeah, I think that's a good grouping, potentially good grouping from the Warriors that translates into a really, really upsetting, like, first off, kill on Anil, but then the objective gets taken. I think you get a good performance from Twig. There were a couple of moments where maybe he falls and you don't want him to, but you also have a lot of moments where he's getting or helping get kills where your team was needed to be able to pick those up. And you also get a lot of damage being dealt here. 32, almost 33,000 being dealt with an 8.5 KDA. You get a beautiful bait right here up against the Vote Uller to be able to 2-tap him. This is one of those moments several times where, the Kings are supposed to be retreating. They're supposed to be out of there. It's supposed to be the turnaround for the Warriors now, that just 1 or 2 things go right for the Kings, and all of a sudden that's all they need in order to make sure things go their way. Plus, again, you get this masterful kill that I believe ends up translating to Big Man Tings getting the FG. Sitting in his mist right there to make sure he gets the cooldown. Yeah, throws it over the wall to steal that away. You get an EFG at 40 minutes. You also just killed off the support. Neil, 1 and 8, not the performance you want from a first pick Sylvanas. I think the Kings, despite the bumps in the road to get there, did play very well cohesively.
And Twig sitting at a 6-6-6 on the slash line. It doesn't feel like it performed that. It looked really strong. He had some really good moments. Got picked off quite a few times, but
that's
the
like
nature
the
of
perfect Halloween slash line.
It really is.
Let's go Twig. Bravo. That's hard to do.
It's a good one there for Twig. 22,500 damage, but let's talk a little bit more about that 32,500 from Big Man Tings. We were talking a little bit about how Discordia has the most damage in a single game in the SPL and had the most damage in this game of the SPL up against the Oni Warriors, able to take them down here in game number 1 and getting set up for game number 2. It's one of those kind of really weird spots, and it happens when you have these very out there picks that really only work for specific players in specific instances of, do we need to risk a ban slot to take something away like a Discordia or like a Hair on the opposite side, but then you kind of have to do that double-edged sword reasoning of, well, if we take that away, what else are we not banning in its place? And it really felt like that game could have just gone either way, but it's the Kings who come out with this as we get ready to jump into game number 2. A lot of thoughts going to be bouncing back and forth between these Warriors players.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, with the Warriors playing very well up until the point where some of their Phoenixes started getting knocked down, there were a lot of moments prior to that where things were back and forth, admittedly still in control of the Kings, but places where they're probably thinking about where they could fight back. And, of course, those moments at the very end where I'm certain they know they could have fought back a lot better than they did. And so I'm anticipating that they're figuring out mainly the next draft. They had Sylvanas, Cerberus, Uller in their top 3. Those are all really good picks, but you had to deal with the Ardia, with the Terra on the other side. And despite the fact that Discordia is not necessarily one of the top mid laners that you're thinking of right now, Discordia was mean, and I think that is something that you are going to have to consider and maybe factor into this with your draft. Maybe not banning it specifically, but doing something that is going to give you a better matchup versus it.
I mean, if I'm not mistaken, the Oni Warriors banned away the top 2 mid laners in Raijin and Tiamat for their first phase of bans, and I think it was also the Khepri they banned. So maybe we see some changes here in picks and bans for game number 2. I mean, the Uller was able to make it through for the Warriors. Maybe that's something that we see change out here for the Camelot Kings. Maybe they go ahead and maybe shift a ban over towards it. Did quite a lot of damage. Sure, the Uller didn't win, but I mean, there were moments where that Uller was just erasing players off the map.
Yeah, and admittedly, there's a couple of plays where if it goes one way for vote versus the way it actually went that we saw, maybe the Kings aren't looking so hot towards the very end of it. And so there's definitely a world where the Warriors could run back something very similar and still be successful. The question to me is the first pick on the Sylvanas, right? Over the RDO, if that was going to be worthwhile for them. Neil didn't necessarily get to have the performance he wanted in a 1-8 slash line. But admittedly, if your team, like, when you're losing and you're the support, that's when things are going to end up looking the worst for you. So I imagine they could very easily go back to it and let things run mostly similar throughout all of this picks and bans phase.
Well, it is the same bans immediately out the gate for both the Warriors and the Kings. Odin, the Morrigan on for the Kings, and a Raijin Khepri ban by the Oni Warriors. Same thing that they did in game number 1. See if they get the Tiamat ban. That was their third one in game number 1, and they will do so. So similar top 3 out of the Oni Warriors in the ban columns. We'll see if their picks like to go the same way. The Camelot Kings, they'll take Geb out, so it's the same 6 bans that we saw in game 1. So they'll repeat them here in game number 2. Now we need to see where the Oni Warriors shift their pick dynamic and see if that Sylvanas was so hot of a priority for them in game 1 will make it through. No, it will be the RTO as a first pick for the Oni Warriors. And now the question that was kind of towards the Kings was, do we see the flex with the RDO? Maybe towards support, probably not with genetics on the team. But now that it's on the Oni Warriors, maybe now we can see this RDO have some flex potential.
Yeah, Neil doesn't mind playing it, but I just have doubts. I think that this is something that is probably going to be through and through for the Warriors solo lane. And it's weird to think because it's not going to necessarily hard carry on its own. But the setup, especially with Uller still being available, I think opens up a much wider conversation. You get 2 of the very, I want to argue, big powerhouses that the Warriors had last time here with the Sylvanas and the Cerberus. And I think that Cerberus has a good matchup versus RDO. I think Sylvanas, in the right hands, can do really well, but also does need his team's help to surround them. And I wouldn't be surprised if they went for, I guess, jungle plus now maybe the Uller if they think Vote's going to be able to turn it around. He had a lot of good moments despite the fact that it didn't win. So it's not necessarily something they need to shy from. There's also a lot of different hunters available, but I am worried if you let it through here that the Kings will just scoop it up.
Yeah, the Kings can very well do so. So it'll be an Uller and a Circuit for the Oni Warriors. So we got a little bit of that front line, then you got the Circuit, still some of that flex potential if it does go over towards the duo lane as a support, or we could still see it out of the jungle as we've been seeing it a little bit more as of recent. Uller to round out at least part of the duo lane, and then a Cupid on the other side for the Kings. This is something we haven't seen from Netroid that I can even recall. Has Netroid actually had a Cupid game? I for the life of me cannot think of an instance where Netroid has played Cupid. We've seen some Zapman Cupid. I think we've seen a little bit of Barracuda Cupid, maybe even Panda Cap, but I don't think Netroid has had a Cupid game just yet.
No Netroid Cupids. That is, admittedly, as much as it is like matchup-wise, theory, ignoring players, not that outlandish to think of, right? Like, okay, yeah, this is a good pick. It does well against Uller. With the more recent build changes, feels like that fits perfectly into specifically Cupid's wheelhouse. Plus, Fields of Love is such a good ult. But I've never seen Netroid play it. I anticipate it to be pretty good because I like the way Netroid plays most hunters, so it'll be interesting to see. Plus, if you want to talk about it, we mentioned healing last time, but Cupid Hearts plus Sylvanas heal, it's a pretty good sustain lane.
Yeah, that lane is, if they get a moment to try and resustain between triple hearts that Cupid didn't drop and then the Wisp from Sylvanas, yeah, they can get themselves back up pretty close to full, and the mana sustain that you get from hearts. One thing that some people sometimes forget about is that as long as you got somebody in lane with you and you got hearts, even if you don't necessarily need it, it's a great way to get a lot of mana back. Even if you get 2 of those hearts, you are getting a net positive. But as far as the bans are concerned for the second phase of it, Yamoja and Kuzenbo banned away by the Kings because they're still not sure if Neil actually has his god just yet, so making sure to take a couple of those top picks off the table, namely one of Neil's top picks in this Kuzenbo, and then the Yamoji just because she's still one of those top supports the players are going towards, and then the Oni Warriors, because they have Circuit, this is most likely going to be rounded in their jungler to take the Hunbots and the Dachi off the table one more time, and it's another Discordia here for the Kings, locked in that 4th spot.
And honestly, this is, again, Cupid Discordia. If you're going through the tier list of, hey, what is going to be the best of the best, do not typically fall at the very top of the list. Do they perform when you need them to? Yes, and that's exactly what it is kind of here. Cupid, I think, again, against the Uller, and of course what we can see late game and team fights for the Cupid, all very solid. What we just saw from the Discordia speaks for itself, so you don't even really have to justify it. Top damage in the game, did insanely well, stole a Fire Giant, got a solo kill. All of it looked really good, and they were able to funnel a lot of damage specifically through that. I'm more curious as to, again, the jungle pick. It was Susano last time. Susano's been treating things pretty well overall for the Kings, and it might be somewhere that they go to. I know we saw, I think, what was it, Raven the other day from from Twig up against the Bolts. Didn't quite have the same performance that you would want, but again, at this point, it is just trying to figure out where he is going to fit most. And admittedly, some things that are tried and true, like Erlang Shin, Gilgamesh, these have still technically merits right now in the jungle.
There's a lot of mid laners up on the table. There's Hera, that Dardis could have gone back to. I mean, there's even the Aphrodite that he's played before, and there's a lot of other just decent mages out there. Zhongkui's not the one that I would have immediately turned my sights towards if I'm the only Warriors. We've been seeing a little bit more success out of it in the solo lane, mostly from Fine OK, who's been playing it a lot on the Jade Dragons. But Zhongkui going into mid lane is something we haven't seen in a little bit. Did see it for some time, but it did not have a whole lot of success. Now the Odin Warriors go with it for their final pick to round it out with a Terra. It's a good god to couple that with because those ghosts, the card damage is going to be able to proc that Earthen Fury really nicely. But Zhongkui to kind of round out the draft. How you feeling about it here, Gore?
I might be misremembering, but I'm pretty sure all of his wins are in the solo lane. Like, I don't think he's gotten a win that wasn't a solo lane. Maybe there's one in there, but I know at least 2 of them, and he's only won 3 games. So 2 of those wins, although this is before this week. I can't even remember if he was picked earlier this week off the top of my head. But I know for a fact that he has been able to be very solidly comfortable as a solo laner. I'm a little worried for him against Discordia. I mean, he's tanky-ish, and I think that Loki and Discordia early on maybe aren't going to shred you as easily, but I do think that there's a lot of work to be cut out here for the Warriors. I'm excited to watch how this shakes out. I like their draft. It's really sustain-heavy. And, of course, they've got a lot of damage to follow it up with. Serket being able to find some good picks. They've got good opportunities, but I don't know. The Discordia hit really hard. You give the Kings a Sylvanas
Really
that looks
hard.
really, really good in their hands from what we've seen over the last few weeks. I'm still thinking the Kings have a little bit of an edge up.
Yeah, I mean, Sylvanas was looking good for Genetics in their last game that they played up in it. And then we have the Discordia that looked really good in the last game. I mean, just this last moment, you put up 32,500 player damage on the Discordia. It's a pick that maybe you look at. If it doesn't get picked up in the first 3, that's an opportunity that you could maybe look towards banning it if you're the Oni Warriors. You're getting a little bit of a sticker over there.
well-
What's going? What'd you find out?
I cast a Zhongkui game yesterday.
Right. You did? Okay.
Big brain moments, baby. I knew we had, I felt like we had seen it. I was part of that set. I was active in that game. I talked about it when it was happening.
We're
And it won.
gonna blame the foot. We're gonna blame the injury from your foot.
Yeah, sure.
And then the ibuprofen you've had to take that's making it a little bit woozy for you.
I'll pretend there's still ibuprofen in my system and that I've been taking it on time. Katie, if you're watching, don't get mad at me. Dude, she genuinely was upset with me yesterday because I got home and I was like, yeah, I've been taking it like 6 hours. She's like, dude.
Gore, we need your foot to
I've
heal.
Got some in my bag. I'll do it.
After this game, I'll make sure that Katie, just for you, I'll make sure that he takes his medicine after this. But game number 1 here, still looking at kind of trying to dive in and really take a bite against these drafts. A lot of sustain on both sides of the field. You have the Ardio and the Terra who provide a lot of team sustain, and then Zhongkui who will have a lot of self-sustain via that card, and then the exercise immediately after, and then you got the Sylvanas Cupid to kind of round it out for the Camelot Kings. Gotta imagine there's gonna be a ton of lifesteal, or a ton of anti-heal, I should say, built by both these teams.
Yeah, I have to imagine it's going to be a little more important for Sardio Terra and Zhongkui, considering his self-sustain that exists in there. But I'm also interested to see who's going to pick it up. Loki Brawlers can fit pretty well over there. Discordia, hey, the Divine Ruin's not too big of an issue either. And so it's going to be pretty easy for the Kings to be able to scoop that away. I'm also curious to see how big of a amount of pressure they're going to be able to put onto Zhongkui early, because I feel like Loki Discordia, especially with Discordia passive, can funnel damage into the mid lane. At the same time, Zhongkui has some decent self-peel to be able to pull things away. So it's just a juggle. You have a couple of levels to work with if you're Twig, and the Loki's been okay from him, right? We've seen some really good Loki games. We've seen some okay Loki games, and that's exactly where I'd put Twig right now.
Can the Kings close it out, or will the Warriors bring us to game number 3? Let's jump right onto the battleground to see all the action.
Game number 1 was 45 minutes long, and the Oni Warriors were in it right up until the end, and a couple pivotal picks make their return here in this one. Dolson Aggro and Doug will be with you again for game number 2. And Vote being back on this Uller, I think, pivotally important. Big Man Ting still being on Discordia. Also pivotally important. Nika getting the RDO here in this one always makes me feel good for the Oni Warriors.
I mean, a switch up in the solo lane on the matchup that was the exact opposite of what we saw last time, but Variety was able to get the better end with the RDO in the early stages, but I think Nika definitely had a pretty big impact when it came to the team fights. Not that Variety was unable to do so the same way. Interested in how well the Cupid matchup's going to go for Netrunner here, because he really played mega passive in the laning phase, which is sometimes the right thing to do, and I think it was in that instance, up against what Vote was throwing at it. So I had no problem with the way Netro had played the laning phase, and he came to the team fights and played really well.
Well, Vote is going to be playing the way Vote did.
Yes, yeah, gunning you down.
I don't know if it was an active choice by Netrunner. It was more forced maybe by Vote.
That's what it does.
You had to sit back.
He was down 2 levels and against an Uller who can easily all-in you at any given point.
Agreed, and I think I'm just as interested because the potential is still there, but this can also get returned. I guess that's a very important kind of moment to look at there. The Heart Bomb takes a little minute to explode, so Vote can finish getting off that cycle of damage and not completely lose the trade. But those are the little min-max moments that might make a difference in this lane. Big Man Tings, I mentioned, back on the Discordia, and I'd be doing a disservice if we somehow ignored Dardes on the Zhong Kui here at a mid lane. We have seen a Zhong Kui game, but it was out of the solo lane. We get the old full damage Zhong Kui here for Dardes. Strife no good. Is the damage still there? Beads on the other end. Well, allow Dardes to walk away. That Strife hits. You might be looking at first blood. Now Cubo Fred on the return gang. Captain Twig says no thank you. I will be leaving, and leave he does.
Fred does have ambush now that he's at 3, but with those health pots ticking, Twig back up makes the right choice. But
he's
I like
nuts.
this. Yeah, chase him back. No reason to let him get these backs for free because you have such a big HP advantage. I am definitely concerned for Dardes on this Zhong Kui, and I've been adamant throughout his struggles throughout the year that I think Zhong has a lot of things going for him. I think that there's a lot of matchups that I like him against a lot. Discordia is not one of them. It's just a pick that forces you to use defensive tools too easily because you're so susceptible to the root. Now, once you're ulting, you're root immune, and then you're really strong against her.
Yep.
But if you're just sitting in there in a mid-game team fight and she roots you, it causes you to use more than you need.
Not unlike that, right? Captain Twig takes the stun from Dardes and actually some decent damage returned. But Twig, low on health and literal 0 mana. We'll have to leave. It is an invade for Cubo Fred on the speed buff, so that's not going to feel great when Captain Twig goes back to check that buff. I'm sticking 2 words together all through the cast already here in game number 2. And going to be a green buff invade, looks like. Or a rotation by it for Cubo Fred instead. Big Man Tings looked at underneath the red. And BMT will walk away. Did Cubo Fred take it?
I don't think so.
I'm not sure. It was on the ground there, but
I think
at any
Tings
rate,
got it. Yeah, I think
Cubo
Tings
Fred
got
was
it
there.
overall. So that's I like Fred's pathing though. I like the idea. It was just half a second too late, but certainly had the right idea and didn't lose a whole lot for it. His entire right side jungle is up except for the blue, which Nika soloed for himself. So steals a good amount of farm away from Captain Twig, puts himself in a good position to be aggressive now that he's bought that heavy mace. And if Fred can be an initiator, which is I think a problem the Warriors had last game and potentially the Kings could have, then maybe we could see some changes in the mid to late game team fights here for the Warriors.
So Big Man Tings will head on back out from base, as Dardes will do the same here. So last time the red buff of Dardes was invaded on, there wasn't not much Dardes could do about it when Captain Twig was there, as well as Big Man Tings. So we'll see if there is return invade potential now for the Camelot King. Some pressure put over here onto Nika. That Stygian Torment used from Variety immediately answered by some beads here from Nika, who's gone Stone of Binding with that first item.
Yeah, it's
Plenty
about
of CC
time,
to
by the
apply.
way, Dave.
Yeah.
Like, Cerberus and RDO have been getting played so much, and no one's going Binding.
Both went Binding, yeah.
And I'm like,
You got all that CC.
What's going on? You do so much damage with that pickup. I'm glad that both of them are seeing the light here. Sona Binding is the truth.
It is the truth, and the truth is that Nika was able to invade blue, and there is going to be another red buff invade, successful this time from Captain Twig. Neomod just had to watch it go down, and purple buff got invaded in that moment as well. But Cubo Fred, it's not often that you see speed buff get taken even once this early on in the game, but twice. It's just got to be frustrating for Captain Twig. Yet again left in the jungle here without much mana. Blinks exchanged. Out goes Twig. Fighting happening on the left. It's Fields of Love from Netroid and the ultimate from Genetics. Neoma on vote. I guess Neoma specifically retains his ult. Jump in from Cubo Fred. And purple buff gets answered back with by the Oni Warriors. It's a game of invades. That's where all the action's been. Invades on both sides of the map.
Yeah, a game of buff trading so far, and that's allowed, unlike win trading. So we're all on the same
so we're
page.
clear.
Yeah, we're clear on that one. Love the idea there from Fred. I think he makes the right play. Just good, quick reflexes from Captain Twig to get him out of a guaranteed death. It would have been a great CC chain. I think a lot of players might have led with Cobra's Kiss, which is a little bit easier to blink out of because that actually has a projectile travel time. Whereas Last Breath is going to latch on right away, but too quick for Twig's blink away.
Cubo Fred has just been very active in the opening minutes of this game. As all the buffs that have been traded back and forth, the speed buff has not been one of them. That's one that Cubo Fred has controlled both of, it feels like, through the majority of this game. So Captain Twig, not surprising that he is one level down. But Assassinate is online now. You have that gap close and the CC that you can apply, maybe half level behind Cubo Fred. Depending on how that farm looks. The left side of the map has felt okay for Netroid and Vote up to this point. Saw some ultimate traded out just a moment ago, but a different start for both of the hunters here. Netroid has gone Jotuns, whereas Transcendence is the option for Vote.
Looks like it could be another blue buff invade with Fred being the strongest on the map right now. He's got Cobra's Kiss, level 7, Jotun's Wrath. I mean, he is really strong. So I like them continuing to try and get these invades going, but finally, the Kings decide that they are losing more than they're gaining by trading these buffs and decide to go. And this is the first time that Fred isn't going to get
That's right.
Bofa.
Nope. Speed buff for Captain Twig.
Bofa these speed buffs.
Well, right. That's how the joke goes, right? Look. It's too early in the game too for me. I can't lose it already. The mental is shattered. Losing to J-Mac in ping pong by like 15 points broke me for the rest of the day. Dardez pulled in by Genetics here.
No fear.
No fear. Dardez will get some damage out onto Genetics. Neoma's taking a lot here though. Or Skull, I should say, right down Main Street, and Neoma walks on away. Looks like Steel was successful though. Big man Ting's not able to pick it up.
That's what the Zhonghui can't do. Most mages gotta panic beads, instantly use your ultimate, everything like that, and Zhonghui goes, cool, I'm down with this.
Big damage from Dardez onto Genetics. The range from Nika.
Close.
No, won't get the kill, and Genetics will head on back. Both teams not shying away from scrapping here. Early in game 2, top player damage now goes to Nika, and a slight gold lead even over to the Oni Warriors, called about 1,000 8 minutes into this game. So we've only seen good so far from this Zhonghui, outside of some of the pressure that it's eaten early on, but has since been able to return some of it to the Camelot Kings. Warlock Staff, first item picked up for Dardez here. That was a popular item when Baba Yaga was all the rage. And synergizes pretty well here with Zhonghui.
Love it. It gives him some pen early on. You get some mana sustain already from your Sands of Time. Didn't go with the outright rush, still bought a starter item, whereas in the past we've kind of seen some players forego a starter item entirely. But I think that this is kind of the right direction. You're going to get tanky enough anyways. You need that mana sustain because you aren't going to be going an early Chronos Pendant or Rod of Tahuti necessarily on a character like Zhonghui, though he does obviously use Rod very well. Just get that tankiness up and get ready to get brawling. And that's the thing about Zhonghui is that one of my #1 pet peeves is seeing people lock in Zhonghui and then play like a traditional mage. You can't. You just got to get in there at all times. Yep. You've got to play, I would argue, with disrespect. You have to disrespect your opponent and force them to make you back up, because otherwise you're just not going to get full value out of Jonathan Quay.
Jonathan Quay. I've always appreciated that one. Another red buff, another invade here from the Oni Warriors. Neoma will dash forward. Genetics, oh my god! He is deleted, and there's first blood for you. Will it get answered back? Yes, Captain Twig jumps onto Cubo Fred, and the W key is held by Dardes, but was it too far? It's a pullback in from the Stygian. Torment and Variety has the answer.
Just too much of a commit on the genetics, not in ability usage necessarily, but in positional usage. Netroid's ultimate just stuffed that engagement perfectly. That was really well done.
There is still a red buff here, but the health bar is slightly favoring the Oni Warriors. Not for long, though. Nika has taken a lot.
Should live.
See if that is a stun. If nothing else, beads get used. And in the event of a follow-up from the Camelot Kings, you definitely have to use those beads, and so Nika will survive.
It's still Netroid playing really well. I mean, he's down 2 levels because this has been the play. We're playing around this Uller. We're giving Vote all the pressure in the world, making sure that he will be our leader in this game. And it comes at Netroid's expense. And it is a skill to lose with grace in lanes like this. It's a skill to not just get absolutely destroyed.
That's always been my draw.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Is I won't feed.
Yeah.
But I'll be like
that is a skill.
I'll be like 3 levels down. But I won't feed.
Hey, sometimes that's all you need to do. Netroid's
Thank you.
job in this game
I
is to
appreciate that.
not feed. That's really his role. But he's doing more than that. He had that really good ultimate that turned the course of that fight. Even though the Warriors get first blood, the Kings get more kills off of it because they have to walk in range of that Fields of Love. He did a good job there, forcing the beads away from Nika. All that to say, he's still down 3 levels. That is going to be worth far less than Vote in the
500 gold or so.
yeah, in the next few engagements, but still doing a good job.
Good job, all things considered. And on the flip side, Vote doing a good job because that's what you need to be able to push that lead, and that's what Vote has been able to do here. He's got his Transcendence fully stacked up, goes back, gets Jotun's Wrath, and so feeling just fine on this Uller, especially if we consider the amount of presence we've seen here on left. If we continue to get these red buff invades, feels like a matter of time before Vote is just going to let out a serious series of damage that ends up clipping one of the Camelot Kings. Around the backside of Nika is Captain Twig here. Assassinate might get him in range. Blue buff halfway back to respawning, so it looks like just some eyes turned towards right. But no commit. Around the backside of mid, though, goes this Loki. There's Variety rotating in a little bit after that as well. Big man Tings is taking a lot of damage, but he dashes out. Numa will finally help get the kill. Netroid answers one back, though, as Cubo Fred falls down, and here's the back-end rotation in from Variety. Dardes will walk away from the rest of this fight. Nika in from the solo lane as well. Captain Twig not wanting anymore. Will waltz on out. Mid lane for jungle is the trade.
Vote finds Netroid as he comes around the corner, but still had some Lotus Crown protections on him from those wisps, so he doesn't take nearly as much, but it's still another successful red buff and purple buff, and if Fred wants to trade his life for Tings, that is a much more worthwhile endeavor than trading for genetics like he did on the last invade. I'm fine with him taking the 1-for-1 himself for Tings every single fight. And again, it's Fields of Love, causing problems, Netroid doing what he can, but he just can't match the output of Vote, who got that whole fight started with a beautiful axe on a Tings.
Fury pulled by the Oni Warriors, and Fury finished by the Oni Warriors. That'll expand on this gold lead right around that 2,000 mark. So playing well here in Game 2 of the Warriors.
And look, I don't want this to be construed in a way that the Warriors haven't been trying or anything like that coming up into these last few weeks, but they feel so much more cohesive with their game plan. Like, you can watch what they're doing, you can watch what they're doing in picks and bans, and understand not only what they're doing, but how they got there. And a lot of times, the being on the same page like this comes from just talking about the game while you're going to grab some food. And obviously you can't do that when one of you is in the freezing north of Canada and the other is here in Alpharetta. You know, it's a little bit more difficult to do that. And I think that, you know, it's not an obvious, you know, they're going to be way better, it's guaranteed, all that kind of stuff, but I think that this is one of the more cohesive game plans, and the Warriors are being much more stubborn about it than they were in the past. They would have these ideas, and it would go well a couple times, and it would go well, and then they would abandon it. This has been consistent through 2 games. We're giving Vote Uller, and we are standing on their left side buffs. And whatever happens, happens, but we will be there when the buff is up.
Now, the Kings win Game 1 aggro, but it's wild to me that Vote gets this pick in back-to-back games. I mean, just with how good it looked in Game 1, and again, how good it looks here in Game 2. If the Oni Warriors close this one out, Time for the Kings to consider taking it away. Variety blinks forward, tanking up the tower here. In goes Captain Twig, stunned, chained onto Nika, and the last bit of damage is there. But now Variety on the wrong side of this lane, trying to walk away. Dardes has a whole lot of damage, and Captain Twig learns it the hard way.
Really like that play as Fred goes in now for Variety, gets his beads, but no shot he lives through this dive. Fred finds his second, and I love that play from the Warriors. Instead of being stubborn and sitting on the purple and waiting an extra 20 seconds for that to respawn, they read the map. They understand what the Kings are likely to do. If they aren't defending red, they're not sitting there doing nothing. They're going to gank Nika. And so let's send a force in order to try and counteract that play. Love that.
I feel so bad if you're Netrioid, but this might feel bad if you're Dardes. Strike, pull, damage, all of it's there, but is enough of it there? Big Man Tings has lost half of his HP in the meantime. He's not going to miss that one. Dardes nearly dodges it out, but a well-laid plan by the Camelot Kings will finally kill the Zhonghui for the second time this game. I want to shine a light on the moment there on left. Vote simply standing there enough to force out the Fields of Love from Netrioid.
Well, he was standing there menacingly. Right. You already know. I watched like 6 episodes of SpongeBob last night. It was
this
really
makes so much sense now. We get the Bofa yellow buffs earlier on.
Huh?
Immediately into the standing there menacingly. Just makes sense. You know what this reminds me of is that this is only tracks. This only tracks for you and I.
Please go ahead.
Only tracks for you and I.
I insist.
A moment ago, you said the freezing cold north, and I thought about how I want to be up there with you and Robin Ma shredding the slopes
three of
Canada.
us kicking
and
legs.
You're right, the Three Musketeers gift that we use under all the replies for one another. Cubo Fred in on the red buff. He's alone here, and Captain Twig, he wants to fight. He'll assassinate in on a Cubo Fred.
Still going?
He is still going, but now he'll turn on away. Fields of Love out from Netrioid, and that has cut off this entrance path. Vote Neilma not wanting to walk right up the gut there. Will end up backing away. BMT ends up getting his red buff. Neilma out and forward, but alone. Dash away and prevent any further fighting.
And that is the first red buff Big Man Tings has gotten since the start of the game, because it was a successful invade when we weren't sure if Fred got it at the second respawn, or the first respawn.
Yeah, you're right. It's been a minute.
That has been the first one since, which is crazy to think about.
Wild. Neilma gets a root onto Netrioid. Vote is low here as well. And this is when the Oni Warriors feel like they're at their scariest. When Neilma, and we had plenty of conversation about this in Game 1. When Neilma is able to play that in-your-face, force you back style of play where the rest of the Oni Warriors can funnel in with you, that's when this team is terrifying, and you got a great pick in Dardes who wants to funnel in with you. And we always have a conversation about what relics you need if you're Zhonghui. Well, he will pick up Blink and make for the 4th Blink picked up here for the Oni Warriors. Only Vote, the one without.
Yeah, I mean, when you got a Discordia on the other team, she has a short-range dash, but it keeps her in a circle, and ghosts can see through stealth. That's like a thing about ghosts.
That's
that
terrifying.
You might not have known.
Yeah, I hate that for me.
So they will just...
Wait, so that counts for under my blanket? They can see.
100%, yeah. But they have respect, too. You know, that's the thing. Is like, they won't... That's your territory, and they won't tread on that, for sure. I think that overall I like it, but the one thing that concerns me is not having Aegis against Discordia Ultimate, late game in particular. That damage is so backloaded that you will, even Zhong is going to get chunked pretty hard by that come late game.
We've already seen Big Man Tings do that once, happened a couple times in Game 1. Variety tanky enough to avoid a lot of the volley damage from Vote. Neilma dashes forward but is not called on his aggressive positioning. Captain Twig, are we going over the wall here? No, we are not. Red buff, another one! Secured for Big Man Tings. Oni Fury stands. Neilma will sustain himself up here, but the Camelot Kings will not want to let this one go quietly.
2 in a row for Big Man Tings on the red buffs at the very least.
Things are looking up.
Things are starting to look up, and it's because these solo laners are starting to rotate over. The stakes are getting higher, as now it's a Fury worth a little bit more in this Oni Fury. There's enough damage on the map now where if you were to get 5 for 0, the team could theoretically go to Fire Giant and grab it.
Captain Twig with an opening onto Vote. That is a level 19 Uller. Everyone else in the game is 17 or below. So make no mistake about it, Vote is the one in the power position here as Brawler's Beat Stick, Jotun's fully stacked Transcendence, and then Tier 1 into his next mace. And so Vote, if able, to get involved and stay involved in these fights might just end things here for the Oni Warriors. The Camelot Kings step forward after the Oni Fury gets started up. There's some damage from Vote onto Genetics, but Neoma burnt away. And I would argue in a bit of a lopsided trade, the Kings come out ahead.
They do in the HP bar department,
yep.
but it's beads
Yep.
on Genetics that go down. So that is a win for the Oni Warriors, but who really punishes him for not having those beads? It's got to be Fred, but
Might be.
does he want to open onto a Sylvanas? Probably not.
Yeah, probably not. Neoma
Hello.
wants to open things up, though. He's gone into the back. All the blinks getting used here, and the Oni Warriors have found the backline, but the backline has been spotted out by Variety as well. Both solo laners involved in the opening kills here in this engagement. Re-engaged from Dardes. Big double stun from Nika, and there's a jump in from Cubo Fred. The Oni Warriors chasing down the Camelot Kings, and a double kill from the Ardio feels good.
Dardes still looking for more, as is Vote. It still has that axe available, but beads are up for Twig. He knew that one was hitting from minute one.
And Captain Twig, quick on the beads, had to use them. Cubo Fred is low here. Genetics is close by. Half HP, maybe a little bit above for everyone else on the Oni Warriors, and that's enough to stall out this Oni Fury at least. So a 2-for-1 trade. The Oni Warriors will come out ahead. It's been a pretty steady 2,000 gold lead or so here over the last couple minutes. Hasn't gotten better, hasn't gotten worse for the Camelot Kings.
It's still okay, though, for the Kings, because I think that they scale pretty well. The Warriors' composition, I would say, is pretty high execution. You know, it's a lot of AoE, and a lot of unmissable abilities like Terra Ult, Junk Wheel. Normally that means it's pretty easy to execute on, but staggering your blinks properly, not dumping abilities into relics, and keeping Vote alive on the back line, I think aren't foregone conclusions. And so for that, it really only takes one bad engagement for the Warriors' composition to start to crumble a little bit. That being said, the Warriors played that last fight really well. Dardes was able to hold his blink until a little bit later on. He re-engaged nicely. I liked the Warriors totally ignoring Variety, let him clean up Neil. The support did his job. He's Terra, he pressed 4. I'm not that concerned about what he's doing after that. I think that the Warriors played that team fight in a much more cohesive manner than what we've typically seen.
Yeah, look how in sync all those blinks are. You can they almost tell a story.
Yep.
You know, Neoma, his blink's coming back first, 25 seconds. Just behind that is Nika. Just behind that is Cubo Fred. And then 10 seconds behind that or so are Dardes. It was a 1, 2, 3, 4. Everyone into the Camelot Kings
Nice,
backline.
Dave. I see that counting work has really been going well.
Yeah, you know, it's as high as I've gotten. Haven't been able to break out of the
Well,
out of the
that's
first
because
board.
you've been used to counting Bengals wins. Am I right, ladies and gentlemen? Yeah, baby.
That is bold words from a guy who's
Sure
supposed to
is.
be getting punished for a bet that we made on the
I'm
Bengals-Steelers game.
gonna post a picture on Twitter. I'll take a picture after this.
Yeah,
of me
fair
wearing
enough.
Our
Fair
Lord
enough.
and Savior Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I don't really have grounds to stand on. The Steelers have been fine for a while, good for a while. The Bengals have been real bad for a while. We'll see if maybe this year we can turn things around. The Oni Warriors have turned things around here in game number 2, where the Camelot Kings still have a chance, though. We've talked about the scaling that composition has. We're starting to get there. 22 minutes in, 4 members at level 18. Nika running down Big Man Tings is not a great trend. Big Man Tings will dash away. And Dardes here, and so, you know, less traditional in the mage category is Zhonghui. Big Man Tings has opted for, I think, the exact same build, where you go Chronos, Divine, Soul Reaver, into the Obshard for that percent pen. Nika has to use the beads here in mid. Looks like Blink a moment ago as well. Dardes, a lot of flat pen online, plenty of healing in there as well. Still missing some of the percent down the stretch.
Yeah, he seems pretty averse to buying percent pen. I don't know why. I think he should like it because it lets him kill tanks way easier, and there are plenty of them over here for the Kings, the Double Guardians. But I think that when you look at his ability to get into the backline with a Blink character, it does make some more sense. Flat pen better against smaller protections numbers like a Discordia or a Cupid will have, and so that's why he's prioritizing that a little bit. Probably still needs a 20% option. Yeah, I just love Rod of Tahuti so much on Zhonghui in particular, because anytime you've got a dot-based character, you get him below that threshold, all of a sudden your dots are doing a lot more. That feels really strong to me, and that all Zhonghui does is dot you pretty much. So a little disappointed that he probably won't have room for it, but maybe he'll just forego a 20% pen option because he already has 10% from the Warlock staff.
Right. Yeah, good point. You get it early on there. Vote. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, you wish.
You wish. Captain Twig jumped on by Cubo Fred. Fields of Love does some work here for Netrioid. Jump on out from Cuvo Fred. Twig's got to leave. Vote does as well. And so those small moments, we've seen that once or twice. Twig tries to engage on Vote. Vote turns around all the damage. And then Twig's got to leave. Those are the types of moments where these games can really shift and turn. If that's clean from Twig and less clean from Vote, suddenly you're looking at a dead Uller, and you've got a great advantage if you're the Camelot Kings. The good news is, it was Uller against the world in the level 20 department. And I say good news, I mean this for the Camelot Kings. Now you've got Twig, Tings, and Netrioid all at that level 20 mark, so the XP means less.
A little bit less, and you're starting to get some starter upgrades as well for the King side. Now both Twig and Netrioid have upgraded their Bumbas into Bumba Spears, so that's going to feel very good for them. I think that overall that was still a very good engagement for the Kings because both beads on Fred and Vote now on cooldown. Particularly for Vote, that's a big deal.
Nice double stun there from Nika. Genetics wide on the pull. So we will shift our dancing onto the dance floor on the right side of the map around the Fire Giant pit. And we hung out for a little while here in the last game, maybe 5-10 minutes or so. We just kind of hung out. And the initiation aggro kind of looks similar this game. I mean, outside of you got Loki on one side, you got Circuit on the other. Those are some big differences. As far as frontline goes, you're still a Cerberus and an Ardio, and you're still a Terra and a Sylvanas over on the other side.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that the Circuit makes a big difference at the very least because that's a Blink character that's going to get involved. I mean, Nemesis is a Blink character, but she doesn't really want to be the first one in, so it made sense that Fred was going to be doing that last game for the Warriors, whereas now on the Circuit, very easy for him to be a fight starter for them. And even Dardes can Blink kind of in tandem with Neil if so choosing.
Alrighty, the Oni Warriors feeling good about their chances around the FG. And it begins. Genetics, Twig, Netrioid, Variety, the whole gang minus a bit of a delay from Big Man Tings will be here to call him on it. The Oni Warriors trying to feel out how quick that response would be, realizing it was pretty quick. Will back away. Twig in mid is going to push up that wave here as well, considering a rotation towards left. But if this is something the Oni Warriors start up, you're going to be fighting without your jungler. Also opens up the opportunity, though, for Twig to either push down this tower in mid or find a roundabout route into the back line of this fight for free.
Nika just blinked.
That was a lot of damage.
Didn't find anything. So Twig gets this tier 2 tower without any sort of concern about what is happening elsewhere on the map.
For free, we might say.
Yeah, that's what we would say. But does need to be somewhat careful with his pathing. Yeah, this was not the direction. Head stage to left. He'll kind of walk himself into a potential red buff as it spawns too.
So the rest of the Camelot Kings pull off the Fire Giant, and the Oni Warriors do so as well. And those are such nitpicky moments where the Oni Warriors, you know that Twig is mid. How fast can we really do this FG? Well, our burn isn't necessarily better than it was last game. You got a Zhang Kui in mid, Uller to provide a lot of that damage, and so it probably would have taken way too long and given Twig a chance to rotate in around the back. So wards will go out. Deep ward coverage for the Oni Warriors and the Camelot Kings for that matter. Oracles for the Camelot Kings are around this Fury, and it looks like reset is the call. And reset we will. We're 27 minutes in. Last time I brought this up, we were a minute and a half away from Enhanced Fire Giant. We're 2 minutes away from it now, and we might get there.
30 seconds early there for you, Dave. But that's all right. You almost had the timing down.
How many is that? I'm only good at 4s.
Right, exactly. It's like a couple
like
of
6
4s.
or 7 4s, 7.5 4s.
Yeah,
something like that.
Right around there. Yeah, that'll do it.
Okay,
right around there.
This jump in from Neomah here. Stun will be there. Half HP, but we know that Neil can sustain up just fine on this Terra, and the rest of the Camelot Kings here as well. Twig does have to be careful because telegraphed maybe not the right word, but the Oni Warriors know where he's been pathing. Blink in from Darkness. Oh my God! What is that? He's dead. He's gone. No, Cuvo Fred finishes off the kill, but Cuvo Fred will have to jump away. Netrioid does a whole lot of damage. Can Captain Twig finish off the Circuit? Yes, he can. Great Stygian Torment. And a fantastic knockup from Genetics. Will reset this fight, but Genetics has lost a whole lot of HP. A double kill for Captain Twig. The Loki, obnoxious to say the least, on the back end of this fight is picked up too.
But Nika's still strong in the midst of 3 for the Camelot Kings. Variety looking for damage onto Neil as Vote paranoid because he doesn't know where Twig is.
They might be able, I was going to say, Twig either pushes in this wave, looks at a Phoenix, or rounds the backside of this fight. Neomah is going to get burnt through, and Netrioid grabs it. The Camelot Kings in a 3-for-1 take the FG scrap.
Still feel like that should have gone so much better for the Warriors. I mean, Dardes solo dings, basically. He just needed a tiny bit of help.
Oh, great pull from Genetics, and it's Nika who's brought, well, real close to death here, and the damage will follow after. Genetics finally will get the kill on to the pesky RDO, and the Camelot Kings, they've got all 5 on the map. Vote is just going to take away farm, I think. Might be waiting to see if,
trying to kill Big Man
Tings, routes in this direction, but unfortunately BMT on the other side of the map.
I wonder if Vote can get in here and steal this away.
Ooh, it's gonna be close. Fields of Love is down from Netrioid. Vote.
No way! No way!
Are you kidding me? Unreal. Vote takes it away from downtown. The Uller hits pay dirt yet again. And will he leap away? The answer is yes. Variety in to chase him down. 3 members of the Oni Warrior get enhanced Fire Giant. He'll pay for his crimes. But it's a fitting bill for the big play that Vote makes.
Listen, sorry for the sacrilege, Joe Burrow, but we all worship Vote now because he is just making it happen, man, on this Uller. It's a big play for the Kings to be able to clean him up after the fact, but how about the lurking Uller in the back line? Kings never saw it.
Yeah, I'm going for PMT, but I'll do you one better. Enhanced Fire Giant's where my eyes go. But you're now fighting without Vote for 35 seconds. Is Enhanced Fire Giant good enough to give the Oni Warriors an advantage underneath their Phoenix here? Immediately pushed back is Kubo Fred, who somehow survives.
Dardes in.
Walking in is Dardes.
Oh
and
my
at the
God.
damage. It's a triple
Oh
kill for
my
Dardes.
God.
Do it to him, baby. 1, 2, 3. Dardes over the wall, nearly gets the quad, and suddenly the Jean Kui has come alive.
If it's not Vote, it's Dardes. Unbelievable. My man nearly just
Do it to
one-tap
him, baby. Hit
penta-killed
him
them.
with the quad. Delayed 4-piece for Dardes. Set him up, knock him down. Jean Kui's hitting the mark.
You can see him kind of inching forward, looking for his moment to hit the gas pedal, and then he slams the Blink ult right on top of the entirety of the Kings. Little EFG enhanced money right there for Dardes. And the Kings, I kind of liked the call. I liked the fact that they were still being aggressive despite losing. You know, a lot of teams would back up, mentally broken after that. Maybe it would have been better to let the mental break.
Yeah, maybe. Variety now. I mean, a tale of 2 moments. That's half of 4, by the way. The Oni Warriors walking into the mid lane. Phoenix will fall. How confident are we feeling? Fair enough. You're feeling all right about that, Phoenix, but not confident enough to keep walking forward. You want to take your advantages as you give them and not gamble them away. Dardes was 1-3 prior to that.
Yeah.
Now 5-3
That'll
on
do
the
it.
Jean Kui.
But look, he should have won them the last fight. He should have won them the fight right before that. But for some reason, the Warriors weren't able to convert off of his initiation. Let's look back at some of the big moments that we've seen over just the last few. This was as it turned into that Fire Giant. That is unbelievable that Vote's able to steal that away and then nearly got away.
There's something about the side flip as
yeah,
well
exactly,
when he sets it out.
Pop and then the side flip. And then look, Variety's trying to keep him in combat, but Dardes just goes right through.
God.
And look at this
You dream of that.
exorcism. Blah!
You
Just
dream of
takes
that.
out Big Man Tings that easily.
Oh my God. I mean, that's
That's the Jean Kui experience, baby. That's what I love to see. And that's the thing that I think the Warriors have been so lacking from
It's
Dardes.
because he's got Blink.
Well, it's because he's got Blink, number one, but he's got confidence. I mean, he started that last fight on right side mids and one-shot Big Man Tings. He gets in there 1v4 because his team makes good space for him, but they had all had to back up by that point. I think that mentality from Dardes, I think that the entirety of all of the Oni Warriors were lacking confidence a little bit. Playing with a lot more after you get a quad like that.
Absolutely. Mid lane Phoenix gone. Left side Phoenix stands. I mean, we've seen like a soft Phoenix defense once in this set. We had a 45-minute game 1. We're 33 minutes into game 2. And the Oni Warriors crumbled on the one attempted Phoenix defense in game 1. How will the Camelot Kings fare? Around the back go Nika and Kubo Fred, and this RDO has found the Discordia. Apple out, but it ricochets off the Phoenix and finds no target. Neilma continues to walk in. The strife is good, though, for Big Man Tings. Believe that saves the life of the Discordia. Can you say the same for Genetics? He lets out a big ult on the back end of his death, and Netrioid able to follow up. Captain Twig ults in. Vote is gone. The Camelot Kings, they've got the health, they've got the kills, and Netrioid with 2.
Just so spread out, and now they're going to be able to chase down the front line. Nika's dead. That should be it, Dave. Even despite the heroics for the Oni Warriors.
That is devastating.
I don't see how they live through this.
Yeah, Nika is going to delay as well as he can, but it's not going to be well enough. Neoma is going to be alone in base, and the Camelot Kings, they get 4 kills. They've got 35 seconds to walk down mid.
I mean, it could be close for Dardes to come up.
Dardes 29. They got 3 Phoenixes, 3 towers still up.
Red, and he's back. Are they not trying to end? Surely they could have ended from there. I am shocked.
I mean, I'm standing up.
I'm shocked. So am I. I got out of my maxonomic chair, and you know I got to take it seriously to do that. I am shocked that they don't go for the end. I think they had that for sure. I mean, there are 3 towers up, and Neil does decent damage, but I don't know. I'm very surprised. But let's talk about how that fight goes differently at the very least for the Camelot Kings, because instead of being all grouped underneath that Phoenix and letting Dardes blink in and go full spooky season on him, instead they spread out. You know, big man's really far back, far away from Netrioid. They use their movement. They're willing
gonna happen
to
again?
give up a little bit.
Neoma walking forward, Fields of Love out. Thank God. Thank God for the sake of your eardrums, that one doesn't get stolen away. I would have lost it. And Neoma gave himself a chance, but this enhanced fire giant confirmed by the Camelot Kings. When you got all 5 on it and it's a little more telegraphed, the direction of the steal attempt, easier to secure it for yourself. So mid lane, Phoenix still down, but respawning shortly. No Fury for the Oni Warriors to take here, but you could lay a trap. Pings are out, though.
Yeah, I was going to say, they did this last game. That's the thing, is that when you play back-to-back games that are very similar,
I'm nervous.
You've got to be ready
aggro.
for it. You've got it. Well, it's spooky season.
It's spooky season, and Dardes is right there. The pings have been spotted. I mean, they know where Ardio is. I'm not.
Yeah, Nika's not here by himself.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he's
it's
not
only
a psycho.
Me, guys.
Yeah. Oh no, out of position again.
But they're going. Are they going to go around the back? Hugo, Fred.
I wonder if they try and base race them. I don't think they win the base race because EFG just matters too much.
Okay, no, you see the backs coming out from the Oni Warriors, and it looks like the attempted fight, not to be. The early pings there enough for the Camelot Kings to know that the Oni Warriors were somewhere on that side of the map. Hey, the good news is,
what's that?
1 minute and 10 seconds are off of this enhanced fire giant already, and you've just now lost your first big base-wise objective. There's a chance as well for a jump in. When you have four blinks, I suppose moments like this are possible. You can kind of group up and then jump in on an unsuspecting target.
Yeah, that's the difference here for the Kings, is that now they have to be very wary of how grouped they are. They were able to use, you know, the back end of the defensive side Phoenix. In previous seasons, that area was pretty narrow, and so you could still kind of fish in a barrel the enemy team as they were trying to retreat, but it's so wide back there now that it's kind of hard to do.
Are they going to get back? That's the big question now. Genetics and Netroid started their backs, but everyone from the Oni Warriors is here in force. Genetics is not the target. Netroid is. He's got both actives. Beads get used. Fields of Love down. Aegis around the corner. Aegis used. Dash on out. Netroid plays it as well as he can, but it's not going to be enough. The Heart Bomb on the other end of it will tick down Cubo Fred a little bit further. Fred will die. And Genetics able to trade out 1. And in the mid lane, go Twig and Variety.
Yeah, that's not bad. But you lose Netrioid, which stinks, though.
Darda's still here, though. You can defend this mid lane Phoenix. Still has beats. Digi and Torment used from Variety. Dardas walks forward, chunks Twig for big damage.
Oh my!
Assassinate is out, and Twig, he can find a fadeaway as well. It's not only Vote who will get it done in this set. Twig says, see you later, buddy. Blinks away and gets out of this engagement. A stun onto Nika. Big man chases up. Apple is out onto the Ardio as well, but look at the massive healing numbers from Nika, who will rumble on away. Axe out from Vote to try to catch out Captain Twig, and Twig is not caught, and Twig's got another Neilmon Vote against the world.
Vote's got to do it again. He's got to do it to them all, but Twig's going to blink in. Jump is still up. Vote might be able to do it.
Where are those cooldowns? You got to turn around. Misses the axe. Neilma finds a stun, but 4 members of the Camelot Kings onto the Titan. They've got enough damage, but do they have the HP? Vote jumps on into the fight, why not? But he gets chipped on away, unstoppable as Captain Twig. Absurd as game 2.
That was a crazy game, man. What a fun set that was between these two teams. I'm sure the Warriors
that'll wake you up, right?
aren't going to be thinking how much fun they had getting 2-0'd by the Camelot Kings. But overall, with the way that they've played and the fact that this is still in the round robin and they're just getting ramped up for those group stages, I think if you're an Oni Warriors fan, it's hard to be anything but excited for the future. Camelot Kings get away with this win, but certainly prove that they were still mentally tough.
Right, it's one of those 2-0 sets where 2-0 doesn't look great if you're strictly looking at win-loss.
Right.
But then you microscope the games themselves. It's a 45-minute loss where you had a chance to win. It's a closing in on 40-minute loss where you had a good chance to win against one of the best teams we have here in this league.
No doubt.
A good-looking Oni Warriors is nothing but good here for the SPL. Unfortunately for them, the Camelot Kings will win it 2-0. What a fun set to round out the weekend. I'm going to go take a break along with Aggro, and then the desk will take us home.
Hey there, SMITE fans, Aggro here. Look, every single year, the SPL just keeps getting better. Season 7 was incredible, and in Season 8, I'm sure our players are going to take their game to the next level. But in order to do that, they're going to need the best gear they can get their hands on. And that's why I'm so excited to announce the title sponsor for Season 8 of the SPL is Alienware. Yeah, that Alienware. Our players are getting the best of the best in computer gaming. These Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition PC setups are insane. Not only will these be the PCs that the players will compete on once we are in studio, but Alienware is also providing one for each player at their home setup to make sure their practice is as good as possible. Now let's get down to brass tacks. The specs on these Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition desktops are amazing. An AMD Ryzen 9 16-core processor.
That's a lot of cores.
That's plenty of processing power.
Plenty of cores.
If you want to stream, this is the way to go.
I know a lot about my cores, so. I mean, Pilates, right?
64 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM.
What? Is that true?
That is true.
I mean, this thing has 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM.
Which you can do literally anything with.
Literally anything.
I've never had more than 16 gigs.
That's quadruple the amount I have at home.
And one of the hottest commodities in the PC world, an NVIDIA GeForce 3090 graphics card.
Insane how much better this is than what I have.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course.
Content's gonna look good.
What's the point of all the power if you can't see it? Players will also be using the Alienware 25-inch 240 Hz monitors.
Man, when I load into scrims with this bad boy, I'm gonna feed so hard. And it's gonna be in perfect picture quality.
We are so excited to be partnering with Alienware for Season 8 of the SMITE Pro League. And the best part is, this VIP treatment, it's not just for the pros. You too can get the best possible SMITE experience. Just go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get special discounts on some of Alienware's best products. Thanks again to Alienware. Make sure you're following them on Twitter and Instagram. That's @Alienware on both platforms. And you can join their community at alienwarearena.com.
Welcome back one final time here to the desk for the SMITE Pro League, powered by our good friends over at Alienware. Make sure to check out Alienware on their social media, at Alienware on Twitter and Instagram. Go to their website at alienwarearena.com. Check out everything they've got going. Or you can just go over to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get some discounts on all of those sweet peripherals, whether it be that Aurora Ryzen 10 desktop, the gaming monitor. I mean, we've been through all the specs onto it. You see it every single week. You just can't get enough of the content from it. You cannot get enough of these Alienware gear. Thank you so much, Alienware, for being the title sponsor here for Season 8 of the SPL and bringing us that final game. Man, Gormizer, what a back-and-forth set. I remember at one point I looked at you and said, man, are we going to see a Game 3? And you're like, maybe.
I sat there and went,
maybe. And I thought for a moment that we were, after that Fire Giant steal from Vote and then a triple kill immediately after by Dardes. I was sitting there going, man, this could be game number 3, but the Kings, they're able to pull it back here and take the set.
I'm almost upset the Kings won this only because the highlights from the Warriors are way flashier than most of what the Kings did. I mean, that Fire Giant steal and, like you said, the kills from Zhang Kui just back-to-back, that is enough to have its own little bit of a montage. But they did so much throughout this game, especially early on. I really liked how well the Warriors were playing this. They kept the Kings on their toes for the wide duration of this game, literally until the very end. But it's that turnaround. Honestly, you could probably ignore, if you're watching this and like, oh man, where did the Kings really win this game? You probably skip 35 minutes into the game, just watch their defense, because that's where they win it, is on a good defense. Then they start to turn it around, start getting picks. It's specifically as well a nice trade where Cupid, you see Netroid go down and he's able to get a turnaround kill. Little moments like that really pick them up. But I have to give the shout-outs all the way over to Twig, because Twig just did some nuts plays. Look, I was saying that his Loki into this game, I said it had been okay up to now. He definitely stepped up for this game. I mean, a lot of these kills were crucial. There were a lot of moments like that where you're able to see him get multiple kills, but realistically, it is these little picks where he is opening up the door. And of course, actually, maybe the biggest thing, after this play where they lose Netroid, despite getting a 1-for-1 trade, and I think a very good one thanks to genetics, you have to rely on Twig. I mean, he is your physical damage to open up these Phoenixes, to get these kills. And so he really stepped up when his team needed him in order to get this win. And the fact that he was able to stay alive and get this nuts kill really made things even better.
Yeah, Captain Twig really stepping up here in game number 2 on this Loki. A little bit of hesitation, as you were talking about, going into the game, but I think this kind of washes all of that away. I don't think anybody has a doubt in their mind that Captain Twig is back on the Assassins. Has been shown it with the Hunbots. He's now showed it here in game number 2 with this Loki. Even game number 1, we got to see some big action from him. 9-1-6 to round out his game. Pretty big slash line there from the Loki. Netroid struggled. I'll put that lightly. He struggled in the early game, but late game able to come back through some big fields of loves. That Fire Giant that did end up getting stolen there by Vote. I watched Vote at the speed buff at the very top of that map before they even started Fire Giant. And as soon as they touched, I saw Vote. I'm like, there's no way he comes back here and steals this. There's absolutely no way that Vote just walks up and takes it, and then he does. An impressive fight immediately afterward by the Warriors to keep it back in, but it is the Camelot Kings come out at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Big damage numbers all around for the team, big plays all around for the team, and most importantly, they get to bump themselves up just a little bit further in those standings.
That's something I think that not only the standings going up, but I think they also got to showcase a lot. I glanced over it, but the Cerberus play from Variety, there were a lot of good moments where they are in wild control, or at least, you know, they're struggling a little bit, I should say, on the Kings. The Warriors are looking to kind of run it down at them, and Variety, whether it's the damage that he's outputting, the stuns, or the ult, really was able to help corral them. You, as a frontliner, never get the support of, hey, look at my slash line, but a lot of the plays that we got to see from Twig were made possible by either him or Genetics.
Yeah, Variety and Genetics able to come up big, and we've got Variety standing by for our post-game interview to talk to him a little bit on it. Congratulations, Variety, on your Wednesday over the Oni Warriors. You get to bump yourselves up in the standings, and you know, it was kind of funny. We talked to Benji a while back, and he said, no, man, we're going to see pretty much the Cerberus and the Ardios. It's going to be the thing. And then we saw a lot of variety in the solo lane. A ton of different guys got picked. And then ultimately this game comes down to the same kind of two. How does it feel, the fact that I think it's your team exclusively almost that's just kind of letting this Ardio come through? How does it feel playing on it and getting a big win?
Obviously it feels good, but kind of bad at the same time. I don't think Arthur is the funnest god to play. I think she's pretty simple. You know, there's not much mechanically intensive things you have to do with her, but she's kind of just in the meta and she's just there, so I kind of just have to play her, sadly.
Yeah, kind of going up here, and then Captain Twig now getting to kind of step into the Assassins. You know, he was kind of teasing a little bit last week, like, man, I'm not really good on the Assassins, not looking real strong. How you kind of feeling about it after a big pop-off today in Game 2 for him?
I think that's just something Ben has in his locker. You know, he just has to practice the god to be. He has to get used to how the meta's playing out. I think the longer this meta stays, the better he'll get overall. So I think it's just a matter of time before, you know, he actually gets recognized as like a top assassin player in the jungle.
What was the comms kind of like in the picks and bans? You know, you get to that third slot, and you know, Netrod, he's been known for more of like the Rom, he's Nami, and the Heimdall. What was kind of the discussion going around where you guys said, you know what, let's go ahead and lock the Cupid in here?
I think it's just like Cupid's just one of them picks where the meta gets in these type of situations, you know, when like Ul's back, Artio's back, Terra's being played, and like just a lot of like non-CC mutant ult gods. I think that's when Cupid comes back, and yeah, we kind of expect them to play the Terra. They obviously picked the ult before the Cupid, so it's just a naturally good Cupid game. So yeah, just a good pick. So yeah, I expect to see more of them from other teams, honestly.
Well, it looked good for you guys in this set. Congratulations on your 2-0 win. I'll let you get back with the team so that way you guys can celebrate.
Thank you very much.
Well, there you have it. Camelot Kings able to come out with a big win today. As you said, Ardio may not be the most entertaining god to play, but definitely can get the work done. We got to see just how impactful this bear was in these games. Some big wins for the Camelot Kings. They get to bump themselves up just a little bit in the standings. Let's take a look at the schedule, though, and see what all you may have missed here in this week of the SPL. And boy, did you miss a lot. Sure, there's a few 2-0s across the board with some big high-end action between the Bolts and the Kings starting out the day. Something about the Kings and taking it to long games, because their games against the Bolts were 30+. Now their matchup with the Warriors are 30+ games, and then we got a few 3-game sets in the middle of all that between the Bolts, the Leviathans, the Scarabs, Dragons, and the Scarabs and the Valkyries. Even had a 3-game set earlier today. Let's take a look at the standings and see how everything is shifted up now with a win here for the Camelot Kings. They're able to keep themselves up there in contention with the Olympus Bolts. They're not in the top 2 just yet. They're still sitting technically in that 5th spot compared to the Bolts, but that is because of the head-to-head matchup that they do have against this team.
Yeah, and that's, again, but all those numbers matter, right? Titans have a really big week coming up for them in the future. They're at 3-1. Dragons are 3-1. If the Leviathans are able to get the perfect 7-0, then they are going to sit up at the top. But knowing that there is a lot that stands between a lot of these teams and that they're all just right next to each other right now, the next couple of weeks are very important.
This is only week number 3. We've still got at least 2 more weeks before we jump into the group stage. Let's look at week number 4 of the SPL to see what action lies before us. Kings and Dragons and Leviathans Warriors to start the weekend off. Then the Dragons Titans get their fated rematch since the playoffs. Olympus Bolts Bolts and Solar Scarabs, Warriors and Valkyries, and then the Atlantis Leviathans and the Tartarus Titans to close the weekend out. Should be a lot of big action. And, Gore, I'm going to kind of piggyback off that if they can make it 7-0. So if the Leviathans do go 7-0, then they have to put the Kings in the other bracket, right? Because the Kings are the ones who shut down those streaks. So ideally, you want to
no, get away.
Yeah,
Go
so
away.
ideally you want to put them in the other group if they do go 7-0. You can't have them being in your same group to shut down that streak.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea for them. Admittedly, like their week, look, like the Warriors, especially after what we just saw, it's something that they have to look forward to and be prepared for. Same thing that they play the Titans that week. The Titans, not just the Leviathans, but they have to deal with the Dragons, and the Dragons, not just the Titans, but also have to play the Kings. I feel like 3 of our heavy hitter teams are really all like having some very strenuous double headers over the next week, and that is going to change, I believe, shake up the standings a lot.
Yeah, we're going to have to keep a close eye on the standings, but that's all for the SPL this week. Don't worry, we still got some more SPL-style content available for you guys the rest of the week. We're going to be kicking it with the pros tomorrow. The Solar Scarabs are going to be in studio at 1 p.m., so make sure to tune in. If you want to see us hang out with them, we'll have some trivia, we'll have some 1v1, some Q&A, all kinds of other fun stuff, so make sure to tune in then. But as for the SPL, that's it for us today on behalf of the casters, the production, everyone else behind the scenes. Thank you all for standing by, and we'll see you all tomorrow when we kick it with the pros.